Chapter 16. Only the evening and early morning are suitable. Jidong looked at Xia Tian in surprise. A thought flashed in his mind, and he said, "Do you mean that the alternation of yin and yang in the morning and evening is the moment when the third fire and fourth fire are balanced?" This time, it was Xia Tian's turn to be surprised. He nodded and said, "You are very smart, exactly so. However, the time for the balance of yin and yang in the morning and evening is only a very short 1 hour, and you can only practice in this total of 2 hours to be effective. This is also an important reason why it is difficult to practice the yin and yang dual system. The pure third fire system can also be practiced at other times, except for the 2 hours at noon, but the effect is slightly worse. But you can't. You only have that short period of time, so it is not so easy for you to work 32 times harder. Go. You don't have to come to class this afternoon. The main course for these days is to help everyone awaken their own attributes." "Thank you, teacher." At this time, Jidong's physical strength had recovered a little. He got up and left with Bissot. Bissot was eager to practice and went straight back to the Fuwa series. Jidong went to the cafeteria to eat something and then returned to his separate dormitory. For Jidong, everything was just the beginning. Today, when Bissot stopped him, it shocked him a lot. It made him fully realize how sad it was to have no strength in this world that belonged to the yin and yang magician. He raised his hand and touched his left chest. There was a little calculation in his mind. Every day was precious. In addition to the morning and evening, there was another place for him to practice, and that was the Earth's core, where the Flaming Bar Queen was. It was also the Earth's core lake. As long as the time was allocated reasonably, there would be no waste. The Flaming Bar said that he could go there to practice for 6 hours every day. Thinking of this, he immediately went to the bar and concentrated on making a cocktail. After the mixing, he did not pour the wine into the glass or even open the lid of the shaker. He pressed his right hand on the position of the red lotus on his left chest and called out to the Flaming Bar. A faint warmth spread from the left side of Jidong's chest and instantly spread to his whole body. Finally, it flowed to the bottom of his feet and gushed out from the soles of his feet. A strange scene appeared. Jidong saw red lotus petals unfold from under his feet, as if he was stretching lazily. Then, these petals rolled up slightly and wrapped around his body. When the last petal wrapped around his body, his whole body was like a huge red lotus bud. This soft red light did not emit any energy fluctuations. With a flash of light, he quietly disappeared from the room. This feeling was completely different from the last time he was sent to the Earth's core by the omnidirectional amorphous teleportation scroll. This time, Jidong did not feel any falling. He just felt that his whole body was warm and indescribably comfortable. The third fire magic and fourth fire magic in his chest were also slightly lit up. The red color blocked his line of sight, and after what felt like a few breaths of time, the red color around him had already become transparent again. The blazing fiery red world once again appeared in his line of sight. But this time, he did not stand in the groove, but directly fell from the sky towards the Earth's core lake. That was the Earth's core magma, with an unknown temperature. The last time he was still on the 100-meter-high cave wall, he was almost roasted. If he fell, wouldn't he be directly turned into ashes? Just when Jidong was shocked, he suddenly felt that the surrounding scenery had quietly stagnated. The red lotus flower that wrapped him had turned into a huge red bubble, floating with his body dozens of meters above the magma. There was no burning feeling like when he first came here. This red lotus not only brought him to the Earth's core again, but also directly isolated him from the high temperature. "You must be startled." The sound of the flaming bar sounded. Jidong turned his head and looked. He didn't know when, but the flaming bar had appeared beside him, and she was also in this red bubble. Although it was not the first time they met, seeing her again, the shock in Jidong's heart still did not subside. She was still in a red dress. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and her long hair was on her left chest like a dancing flame. Her white and slender fingers pointed to the shaker in Jidong's hands and said, "Is this for me?" Jidong nodded, unscrewed the shaker, and handed it up, saying, I was afraid that it would evaporate here, so I didn't pour it into the glass. The flaming bar took the shaker and said, "Thank you, Jidong. You're going to start training." "How do you know?" Jidong looked at her in surprise. The flaming bar smiled mysteriously and said, "It's a secret." As she spoke, the red bubble had already brought them to the depression in the wall. The flaming bar didn't seem to do anything, but she had already separated from the bubble and was floating in the air. "Don't waste time. You can only stay here for 6 hours a day. When you want to leave, just press the red lotus on your chest and say goodbye to me, and the red lotus will send you back." Jidong asked, "Then can I be separated for the next 6 hours?" The flaming bar said, "Of course you can. If you haven't returned after 6 hours, the red lotus will also send you back. Let me have a taste of the fine wine Jidong brought me today." As she spoke, she tilted her head back and took a sip. The wine in the crystal flask was milky white and looked like rich milk. Jidong looked at the flaming bar nervously and took a sip of the wine. The cocktail he made this time was obviously different from the previous one. If his heart was filled with gratitude when he made Yang Bingtian's Midnight Sunshine, then this time, his specially made cocktail for the flaming bar was filled with a different kind of emotion. The same ingredients, when made in different moods, would taste very different. An outstanding bartender would definitely be good at infusing their own emotions into the wine they made. When making this glass of wine, Jidong's heart was filled with intense admiration, but there were no impurities. Ugh! Raging Flame glanced at Jidong, smiled slightly, and said, "This cup of wine seems to feel different from the last time. Jidong, you're really an outstanding bartender. Can you tell me its name?" "Of course, it's called White Moon. It's made with 5/10 of Bacardi, 1/10 of banana sweet wine, 1/10 of coconut wine, and 3/10 of orange juice. It's milky white, slightly yellow, sweet, and slightly sour, and the alcohol content isn't high. It's more suitable for women." The flaming bar nodded, then looked at the flask in her hand and said, "Next time, use a glass. It'll feel better that way, and you won't have to worry about it evaporating. You can start practicing now. In my red lotus shield, the third and fourth fire elements will be filtered to a level that you can absorb. Don't worry, I'm going to slowly savor this glass of White Moon. See you tomorrow." The red light quietly faded. In the blink of an eye, Jidong and the flaming bar had already disappeared. I don't know if she can feel my emotions when I'm mixing the wine. Jidong's heart was slightly perturbed. He had never really fallen in love before, let alone courting a woman. In this aspect, he was even more of a novice than the yin and yang magician. Moreover, the difference between him and the flaming bar was huge. He could only entrust his feelings to the wine. This time, Jidong sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. This time, it took him a full quarter of an hour to calm his heart. However, the fire elements in the depths of the earth's core were too abundant. Just as he sent out a hint of guidance, 2 different fire elements had already rushed in. The passionate third fire element and the gentle fourth fire element combined with the dual magic in his body at the same time. This time, there was no repulsion from the elements in the field. Jidong only felt as if his body was being tempered in a furnace. After the rich, dual fire elements entered his body, they converged towards his chest like rivers flowing into the sea. When they flowed through his meridians, Jidong felt as if his skin, muscles, and bones were moaning in comfort. The 2 different fire elements stimulated his body to slowly change. After these energies flowed through his body, they finally combined with the 2 points of magic in his chest. The 2 points of magic were obviously growing bit by bit. Although the process was very slow, its growth did not change. This was the first time that Jidong had truly entered the state of cultivation. Xiatian once said that before forming the yin-yang crown, the yin and yang magician could only rely on his own thoughts to feel the changes in the elements in the air, then guide them into his body and combine them with his own magic to become his own power. Although Jidong had a body of yin and yang balance, which caused him to absorb the fire elements much slower than the yin and yang magician, who only had one element, he had his own advantage, which was his 6 senses that were far superior to a normal person's. He could roughly judge the ingredients and taste of the alcohol in the flaming bar with just his sense of smell. One could imagine how sharp his six senses were. A human's six senses were the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The last one represented the thoughts and feelings. He could easily focus his thoughts, which made it easier for him to absorb the magic elements from the outside world. The absorption process was also faster. Moreover, the concentration of fire elements at the geocentric lake was many times higher than on the surface. Therefore, Ji-dong's cultivation speed was even faster than those students who only had one element. Ji-dong did not cultivate for too long. Around 2 hours later, he chose to return. Hong Lian sent him back to his room. After becoming a level 1 apprentice, the 2 magic points on Ji-dong's chest were only the size of mung beans. If it was not for the fact that they glowed on their own, it would have been easy to miss. After an hour of cultivation, he could vaguely feel that his magic had increased a little. Although it was not obvious, it was definitely an improvement. It was already afternoon, so it was not suitable for him to practice at night. Ji-dong lay on the bed to rest while recalling the whole process of his previous practice, reliving the feeling of the 2 types of mana entering his body. Gradually, a glimmer of understanding rose in his heart. Whether it was the 3rd fire element or the 4th fire element, after entering his body, they all seeped into his skin and then slowly gathered in his chest. Although it felt as if his body had filtered them once, and the last remnants of the fire element converged with the mana in his chest, the growth rate of his mana was not fast. But in reality, that should not be the case. The 2 elements were not filtered, but absorbed by his body. The warm feeling in his body should be that they were subtly changing his body. It was like using the scorching energy to burn away the impurities in his body, so that the attributes of his body would become purer. Although it would not directly help him eliminate a large amount of impurities like the crystal crown, this kind of subtle change would still be very beneficial to his body. Ji-dong's judgment was very accurate. In the process of yin and yang magician's cultivation, the first 10 levels before condensing the yin and yang crown was the most important. The reason why it was important was because during this process, their body would be combined with their own attributes until all the impurities in their body were cleared. Only then could their body be completely connected with the corresponding element, and only then could they condense the yin and yang crown. The purer the body was in this process, the closer it was to the elements themselves, then the faster the cultivation speed in the future would naturally be. After careful consideration, Ji-dong's thoughts became clearer and clearer. Before condensing the yin and yang crown, the only thing he could do was to use the time to absorb the 2 fire elements as much as possible. The more he absorbed, the better it would be for his body. In the evening, Ji-dong began to cultivate in his room. He wanted to feel the difference between cultivating on the surface and cultivating in the earth's core. When the cultivation started, Ji-dong couldn't help but smile bitterly. Although the fire element C and fire element D were no longer repelling each other when the yin and yang were in balance, the concentration of the elements in the air was at least 10 times worse. Moreover, at the Earth's core lake, the 2 elements did not need much guidance from him and would directly enter his body. However, it was different in the academy. He had to use all his willpower to guide the fire elements in the air that were not that dense to fuse with his body. After all, this was the Southern Fire Empire, the place with the most abundant fire elements on the mainland. With the density of the fire elements and the difficulty of absorption, it was no wonder that the flaming bar said that 6 hours of cultivation at the Earth's core lake was enough to make up for the 32 times difference between him and the single attribute yin and yang magician. However, even so, Ji-dong did not give up on the idea of training in the academy. Even if this 1 hour in the evening could only bring him 1% of the elemental condensation that was equivalent to the Earth's core lake, he would never give up. Every bit of energy accumulated was the foundation of his future success. Chapter 17. In the Fire Academy, Ji-dong began to live a regular, peaceful, and even boring life. Every morning, he would train for an hour at the intersection of yin and yang. After breakfast, he would start the day's lessons, learning the various knowledge of yin and yang magician. In the evening, he would train for another hour, then make a cocktail for Yang Bingtian. After dinner, he would return to his room and make a glass of wine for the flaming bar. Then, he would bring the wine to the Earth's core and begin the most important 6 hours of training. Ever since they were stimulated by Zhu Gui, both the effeminate Bis So and the tall and muscular Car devoted themselves to training. They did not even come to Ji Dong's place to drink. Both of them improved very quickly. Not only did they become level 1 apprentices, but they were also the best among the first years, second only to Zhu Gui. The teachers did not pay much attention to Ji Dong. Even Yang Bingtian would only occasionally ask about his training progress. Naturally, Ji Dong would not reveal that he was training at the Earth's core lake. He just brushed it off. Therefore, no one knew his specific training progress and level. In the blink of an eye, a school year had passed. It was time for the end-of-term examination. Flaming Bar. Placing his hand on his chest, Ji Dong once again called out the name that haunted him. The familiar red lotus quietly wrapped around his body and disappeared from the room. Ji Dong had experienced this process more than 300 times. He could not be more familiar with it. Everything was the same in the fiery red world. The red lotus turned into a bubble and supported Ji Dong's body. "You're here." The flaming bar smiled and took the cocktail from Ji Dong's hand. Ji Dong only nodded, but his eyes never left her face. Almost a year had passed. Ji Dong could only see the flaming bar for a short moment every day. After receiving his cocktail, the flaming bar would leave and let him cultivate on his own. After more than 300 days and nights, Ji Dong's admiration for the flaming bar did not diminish at all. Instead, it grew stronger. Although he did not really understand the flaming bar, and his conversations with the flaming bar were only as simple as a few words, the cocktails he made every day were more emotional than the day before. Ji Dong did not know if the flaming bar could sense this, but he was sure that his bartending skills had recovered to more than 50% of what they were in his past life. If it was not for the fact that the wine in this world was slightly different from his past life, he would have recovered even more. Furthermore, the flaming bar had always been satisfied with his cocktails and never had any objections. This cocktail is called Gentle Sea Breeze. It has a wave-like texture with a continuous impact. As usual, Ji Dong introduced the cocktail he made today to the flaming bar. The flaming bar listened to him and slowly savored the glass of Gentle Sea Breeze. Both of them had formed a tacit understanding. Tasting the cocktail was one of the joys of the flaming bar while listening to Ji Dong's explanation. Watching the beautiful lady drink the cocktail that he made for her was also a joy for Ji Dong. When he saw the flaming bar's expression change because of the taste of the cocktail, Ji Dong felt an indescribable satisfaction in his heart. When Ji Dong finished his explanation, the wine in the glass was finished. Just as Ji Dong was about to be sent to the cave wall by the flaming bar to start cultivating, the flaming bar spoke up. "Ji Dong, tomorrow is the end of your first year. Are you going to amaze everyone in the end-of-term examinations?" The flaming bar returned the glass to Ji Dong and asked with a smile. Actually, Ji Dong had grown a lot since a year ago. Of course, it wasn't in terms of age. After a year of cultivation, he was no longer as skinny and weak as he used to be. Although he wasn't as tall and strong as Carr, he looked like an ordinary 11-year-old youth. He had grown a little taller, and his bronze skin was filled with a healthy luster. He had the standard short hair of a male student in the academy. His gaze had become more resolute and steady. Although he wasn't considered handsome, his steady temperament left an impression easily. Ji Dong was stunned for a moment. "How did you know that I'm going to take the end-of-term examinations tomorrow?" The flaming bar smiled and said, "Actually, I know everything about you. The Red Lotus can not only send you here and back, but it is also my eyes. This is the secret I told you before." Ji Dong was enlightened. "I see. No wonder." Thinking back to the first time he came here to cultivate, Flaming Bar already knew that she had been watching over him. "You haven't answered my question," the Flaming Bar said with slight annoyance. This was the first time Ji Dong had seen her reproachful and delicate face. It could be said that the moment he saw the Flaming Bar was the moment his willpower was at its weakest since he came to this world. I've never thought about amazing everyone with a single brilliant feat. I just want to cultivate hard and become a true yin and yang magician as soon as possible. The flaming bar said thoughtfully, Do you crave power that much? Jidong said, Yes, I crave power. Without power, I'm nothing in this world. Moreover, since I've chosen this profession, then I must do my best and put in all my effort. The flaming bar nodded and said, I believe that. It's been almost a year, and I've been watching your daily cultivation. Since the first time you came here to cultivate, you haven't wasted a single moment. Even though the effects of cultivating here for 6 hours are 10 times better than the 2 hours you spent cultivating on the surface, you never gave up on that period of cultivation. 300 days are like 1 day. This perseverance is really rare. I've also drunk your wine for a year. If you don't mind how your classmates look at you, then I have something to teach you. It will be very beneficial for your future cultivation. You want to teach me? Jidong asked in surprise. 80% of the joy in his heart was not because of what the flaming bar had to teach him, but because he would have more time to see the flaming bar. Just looking at her and listening to her voice would cause Jidong's hormone secretion to accelerate. Although it wouldn't be as embarrassing as the first time, the indescribable intoxication could be said to be the only entertainment that Jidong had this entire school year. No matter how boring and arduous cultivation was, as long as he saw the flaming bar once, his heart would become more resolute. What he didn't mention was that one of the main reasons why he pursued power was because of the flaming bar. He knew that the current him was not worthy of the flaming bar, no matter what. He had to become stronger. Only when he became as strong as the flaming bar would he truly have the qualifications to pursue her. Cultivating to become a yin and yang magician was his only path now. The flaming bar nodded slightly and said, Look. As she spoke, she put her right hand in front of Jidong. In a flash of light, 2 tiny flames appeared in her palm. One was a golden flame, which exuded the aura of the third fire magic. However, it was different from the third fire magic that Jidong usually felt. The third fire energy contained in this golden flame seemed to be extremely rich. Although it looked like it was only a little bit, the aura of the third fire magic was much stronger than his own third fire magic. And the other flame was black, quiet, and dark. That faint black flame gave people a more intense feeling, gloomy and mysterious, like a flame from the 9 serenities of hell. Compared to it, his own corrosive fourth fire magic power might not be worse in terms of energy intensity, but the yin qi in the attribute was much worse. These are 2 seeds, and also my reward for you mixing wine for me for a year. I will integrate them with your own third fire magic to make changes. You should also feel that although the 2 flames in my hand are also yang fire and yin fire, they are much purer than the 2 magic you are currently cultivating. This is also the fire I use. The golden one is called Third Heaven Primordial Yang Sacred Fire, and the black one is called Ding Si Dark Yin Spiritual Fire. With the addition of these 2 seeds, you will also have the same flame as me. However, there's a premise that I must tell you. The magic that you have worked hard to cultivate for a year will be concentrated and burned because of the transformation into these 2 flames, and the magic will be greatly reduced. So, you have to think clearly whether you are willing or not. Of course I am willing, Flaming Bar. Let's start now. Jidong said almost without hesitation. In fact, when the Flaming Bar said that he would have the same flame as her, Jidong did not think about any more problems in his heart. To be able to have the same flame as her was a kind of happiness for him. The Flaming Bar said, Don't be impulsive. The magic that you have worked hard to cultivate for a year may not be left with much. Are you willing to waste a year of hard work? Jidong looked deeply at the Flaming Bar, and a trace of pride showed in his eyes. He said, If I can work hard for a year, I can work hard for a second year. How can I not understand the principle of breaking and building? Using a year of hard work in exchange for a qualitative change, this is definitely worth it. Breaking and building? That's a really good saying. The Flaming Bar looked at Jidong with some surprise and said, You've really made me look at you in a different light. As expected of a physique with a balance of yin and yang like me. Believe me, you will definitely rejoice in the decision you made today. A faint golden light shot out from the flaming bar's eyes. Jidong only felt his vision blur, and then he lost consciousness. A layer of red light wrapped around his body in time, preventing him from falling. The flaming bar gently rubbed his head and said, Jidong, you really didn't disappoint me. I'm more and more interested in you now. Did you know, I actually don't want to see you anymore because you make me feel used to it? To me, this is a kind of shackle that I can't have. If you had hesitated just a little bit, I could have hardened my heart to chase you away. Or if you didn't say that breaking and building at the end, I wouldn't have drunk your wine. But now, it looks like my habit will continue. Breaking and building, what a good breaking and building. Since it's already a habit, then I always have to do something for this habit. This feeling is really strange. I want you to disappoint me and drive you away, but I also want to be able to taste the wine you make. This feeling, this is the first time since I was born. Let me see how long your persistence can last and how determined you are. As she spoke, her palms with two kinds of flames quietly turned over and branded on Jidong's chest. Jidong's body trembled slightly. Then, red and blue, the two-colored airflow seemed to be forcibly squeezed out and overflowed from Jidong's pores. Poof! Gold and black. The two-colored flames were ignited in an instant. The surging flames suddenly filled the red bubble that wrapped around Jidong and the flaming bar. It felt like the overflowing third fire magic and fourth fire magic from Jidong's body were the fuel of the gold and black flames. At this moment, on Jidong's forehead, there clearly appeared two corona stars with double shadows. A corona star was in the center, but it was not half red and half blue like when he was a first-level apprentice. Instead, it was a red corona star and a blue corona star alternating, but both were complete starlight. On the right side of this corona star, which was to the right side of Hyoheim's body, was a double shadow of a corona star. The upper layer was red and the lower layer was blue. It was also a complete corona star. Among the teachers of the Fire Academy, who would have thought that in this short period of 1 year, Jidong, a dual-element cultivator with balanced yin and yang attributes, who was regarded as trash, had already reached the strength of a fourth-level apprentice in the fire element? It should be known that a fourth-level apprentice, even if it was a second-year student who could achieve it at the end of the term examination, was already an excellent result. When it came to third-year students, this was a common result. Although Jidong had the most suitable place to practice in the geocentric lake, it was not an exaggeration to say that diligence made up for his shortcomings. This was also why Flaming Bar had asked him whether he wanted to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat or absorb the seeds of her two special flames. How could an 11-year-old student who had the strength of a fourth-level apprentice in the fire element not cause a sensation? While in a coma, Flaming Bar's voice rang in Jidong's mind. This voice was directly imprinted in the deepest part of his heart. The third fire is the yang fire, and the third fire is the yang fire. The fourth fire is the yin fire, and the fourth fire is the dingxi fire, which is the dingxi fire is the yin fire, and the fourth fire is the dingxi fire. They are all the kings of fire, and have the ability to subdue all fire. Don't show them unless you are in danger. Learn to hide your strength, and you will have a better chance to survive. Next, I'll teach you the method to restrain the ultimate twin flames, the divine lock of yin and yang. This method will allow you to store the purest power of yin and yang in the ultimate twin flames, and only when you need it will you be able to unleash the true power of Bing Wu primordial yang flame and Ding Si nether spirit flame. Chapter 18. After an unknown period of time, Jidong woke up from his slumber. When he opened his eyes, he found himself sitting in the depression of the cave wall, and his entire body was in a strange state. The first thing that Jidong felt was not the change in his mana, but his vision. As he looked ahead, the magma lake in front of him seemed to have become clearer. Moreover, he did not need to use his mind to feel it. Just by looking at it, he could easily distinguish the large amount of Bing fire element and Ding fire element that had condensed above the magma lake. The blue and red elemental light converged into ribbons, and it was a spectacular sight. Not only that, but he could also clearly see the changes in every bubble in the magma. His vision was many times better than before. Vision was only a part of it. Jidong, whose innate six senses were superior to ordinary people, immediately felt that his six senses had been enhanced in all aspects, especially the feeling of his mental strength, which had been enhanced several times. He recalled the teachings of the flaming bar when he was in a coma, and the yin-yang lock technique immediately appeared in his mind. At the same time, his attention also fell on the dual mana in his chest. When he first started cultivating, his Bing fire element and Ding fire element were like two light spots the size of mung beans. After a year of cultivation, these two light spots had increased to the size of broad beans. However, at this time, when he focused his mental strength on his chest, Jidong found that his dual mana had been restored to its original state, which was the mana of a level 1 apprentice. The difference was that the original blue and red light spots had now become gold and black. Are these the seeds of the Bing Wu primordial yang sacred fire and the Ding Si netherworld spiritual fire? The flames of extreme yang and extreme yin. Jidong was not depressed because of the weakening of his mana. Instead, he was filled with excitement. When he saw the two colored flames in the flaming bar's hands, he felt the terrifying strength of the pure energy. His mana could be recultivated, and he could still recover to the level of a level 4 apprentice in a year. However, this flame source could not be obtained by cultivation. Just from the changes in his body, he could see how powerful the attributes of these two flames were. The flaming bar had really given him a big gift. Flaming bar, thank you. Jidong shouted in the direction of the magma lake. A ray of light shot out from the magma lake and floated in front of Jidong before stopping. At this moment, Jidong realized that the red barrier that had always been protecting him had not appeared. Even in the world of the core lake, he still did not feel any scorching heat. It was as if he was in his own room, neither warm nor cold. That ray of light was the empty wine glass. The flaming bar's voice came from all directions. Don't be surprised. The Bing Wu primordial yang sacred fire and the Ding Si netherworld spiritual fire are the kings of fire. Although you've just fused with them, you already have a certain level of resistance to fire. Remember the divine yin-yang lock technique that I've taught you. When you're free, go back and cultivate it. Don't reveal your ultimate fire unless you're strong enough. 6 hours are up. You should go back now. The red lotus reappeared and wrapped around Jidong's body as it quietly returned. When he returned to his room, he realized that the sky outside had gradually brightened. It was almost time for his daily dawn cultivation. Jidong put the wine glass back on the bar counter and revealed a faint smile on his face. He thought to himself, "It's been a year, flaming bar. Are you finally starting to accept me? I won't let you down. I'll only work harder in the coming days." The divine yin-yang lock technique could be used to cultivate when he was unable to absorb yin and yang mana. At this time, he had to start cultivating dual mana again. He had been beaten back to his original state from a rank 4 apprentice, so he naturally needed to put in more effort to recover. After sitting cross-legged on his bed, Jidong was shocked when he first started cultivating. Firstly, he only needed to use his will to calm his heart down. Immediately after that, the distribution of the Bing fire element and the Ding fire element that were 100 times clearer than before appeared in his mind. Not only in the room, but his will even extended to 30 meters away. As soon as his will appeared, the two fire seeds in his chest pulsated slightly. Immediately after that, the two fire elements in the air surged toward his body at a speed that was several times faster than before. They turned into red and blue light spots and entered his body. However, what made Jidong feel strange was that although the speed at which he absorbed the dual fire elements had increased a lot, the dual fire elements immediately disappeared after entering his body. It didn't feel like they were flowing through his body and condensing in his chest like they usually did. The flaming bar did not tell him that these two types of extreme flames would be different from before. It was the complete opposite of the extremely detailed teaching methods of the teachers in the academy. Perhaps the flaming bar wants me to understand it on my own. As Jidong strengthened his will to absorb the two fire elements from the outside world, he silently pondered about the changes in the flames. Gradually, as the feeling of the past cultivation returned, the fire elements in his body began to slowly fuse with his chest again. Ji Dong discovered the mystery behind it. At this moment, the speed at which he absorbed the fire elements from the outside world was at least 5 times faster than before, but the effect was no different from before. However, Ji Dong discovered that when a large amount of dual fire elements fused with his chest, although it was not proportional to the amount he absorbed, their colors were the same as the 2 fire seeds in his chest, gold and black. With this, he vaguely understood that his dual mana as a level 4 apprentice had only been transformed into the ultimate dual fire of a level 1 apprentice. In terms of mana, it had shrunk to a quarter, and the strength of his mana was no different from when he was a level 1 apprentice. The only thing that had changed was the fire attribute. From this, it could be seen that the speed at which his mana increased did not change. After absorbing the large amount of fire elements showed that a large amount of fire elements have been refined by his Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire, a Dingxi infernal spiritual fire during the process of absorbing them, and turned them into fire elements of the same attribute before fusing with them. Hence, his rate of absorbing fire elements was 4 times faster than before, but the speed at which his mana increased did not change at all. Not only was this not a bad thing, but it was also a great thing. Flames that required such refinement were only used to strengthen his own attributes, which showed how overbearing the attributes of these 2 ultimate fires were. Moreover, the dual fire elements in the air were limited when he cultivated in the academy. When he went to the flaming bar to cultivate again, wouldn't the endless Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire and Dingxi infernal spiritual fire improve his cultivation even faster than before? If his cultivation in the past was said to be a narrow path, then after the 2 fire seeds given to him by the flaming bar, there was no doubt that his cultivation would be on a broad path. After finishing his morning cultivation, Ji Dong washed up briefly and went to the canteen for breakfast. As soon as he entered, he saw Biso and Kar, who had already arrived. These 2 brothers of his were obviously excited today. When they saw Ji Dong, Biso immediately waved at him and said, "Boss, we've prepared your breakfast for you." Ji Dong came to the table and sat down. He looked at the 2 of them and asked doubtfully, "What's wrong with you 2? Is there something to be happy about?" Biso said, "Boss, today is the end-of-term examination. It's the time to test the results of our cultivation this year. I heard that the dean will be here personally. Look at the others. Those who look dejected are obviously those who did not do well in their cultivation. Those who look similar to us should have improved a lot. It's the same no matter which year they are." Only then did Ji Dong remember that today was the end-of-term examination. He couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. He certainly couldn't tell anyone about the changes in his flame, but this was the magic power of a level 1 apprentice. He was afraid that the teachers and President Yang's faces would be very ugly. The end-of-term examination was conducted for each year from low to high. All 61 first-year students of the 3rd Fire Department and the Fuhua series came to the Academy's auditorium as the first batch. Sure enough, as Biso said, President Yang was sitting in the center of the rostrum. Beside him, there was an older female teacher who looked about the same age as him and the other teachers of the 2 departments. There were more than 10 people in total. Xia Tian stood on the side of the rostrum and said loudly, "The end-of-term examination for the first-year students of the Fire Academy will now begin. Whoever's name is called, go to the stage and release your magic power. The number of Corona stars will be used as the final evaluation. The evaluation standard for the first-year students is that level 2 apprentices are qualified to pass, and level 3 apprentices are excellent. Now let's start. 3rd Fire Department, Zhu Gui." Hearing this name, Ji Dong, Kar, and Biso all focused their attention. It had been a year. Although Zhu Gui didn't cause trouble for Biso, she was also very unsociable and rarely communicated with other students. Except for class, she went back to her dormitory. It was said that her family spent a lot of money to live in a dormitory alone. Zhu Gui's figure really made people speechless. Although she was only 11 years old, she already looked like an adult woman. Her body was slender, and her face was expressionless. She strode to the rostrum, saluted President Yang and the teachers, raised her hands, palms up, and with a poof, 2 red flames rose from her palms into the sky. Suddenly, the auditorium was full of exclamations. After all, among the students, only Ji Dong and the other 2 had seen Zhu Gui's strength. On Zhu Gui's forehead, there were clearly 3 ruby-like stars. Compared to the uproar of the first-year students, the teachers on the stage were very calm, as if they already knew that Zhu Gui's strength was far better than her peers. Yang Bingtian nodded with satisfaction. Xia Tian said, Zhu Gui, 3rd Fire Department, 7th level apprentice, excellent results. Next, 3rd Fire Department, Car. In the name list in his hand, the order of the students was arranged according to their usual performance and general strength. Ji Dong was an exception because his training time was different from the 3rd Fire Department and Fuhua series students, so the teachers naturally would not pay much attention to a good-for-nothing like him, so his name was ranked last. As expected, Car did not disappoint Xia Tian. His hands were also ignited with red flames. Although it was much weaker than Zhu Gui's, the 2 complete royal stars were enough to prove his strength. 3rd Fire Department, 4th level apprentice. To become a 4th level apprentice within a year, there was no doubt about his talent and hard work. Compared to Zhu Gui, teacher Xia Tian seemed to like Car more. His fierce face showed a rare smile. The assessment that followed was very fast. After all 6 years of the academy had to complete the assessment in one day, and each student only needed to release their magic on the stage to complete the assessment. One by one, they went up and down the stage like a horse lantern. Most of the students' results were 2nd level apprentices, and occasionally a 3rd level apprentice would appear, which would be recognized by Xia Tian and given an excellent evaluation. When it came to the Fuhua series side, the first to go on stage was Bissou. Before Bissou went on stage, he deliberately gave Zhu Gui a provocative look, but Zhu Gui did not even look at him and silently sat in the first place of the 3rd Fire Department students. A strange blue flame emerged from Bissou's palm, and 2 blue stars impressively appeared on Bissou's forehead. Like Car, he had also reached the strength of a 4th level apprentice, and there was no doubt that he was the first-year apprentice of the Fuhua series. One had to know that although Car and Bissou both had 85% of their physical attributes, they would not be any less than Ji Dong in cultivating from an ordinary person to a 4th level apprentice in this school year. Only by continuously cultivating every day and adding talent could they have such results. Of course, because Ji Dong had eaten the 2 crystal crowns that Yang Bingtian had given him. Before obtaining the ultimate dual fire, his dual magic was already close to a 5th level apprentice, and was even above Car and Bissou. The Fuhua series assessment gradually came to an end, and when Xia Tian called out Ji Dong's name, he closed the name list in his hand. Ji Dong sighed in his heart. What was to come would come. He did not expect that he would have such an embarrassing day. Although he had gradually accepted his identity in this world, he could not forget the various things in his previous life, especially his pride as the god of wine. When he arrived at the rostrum, the first thing that greeted him was Yang Bingtian's smile and slightly comforting gaze. Over the past year, just like at the Flaming Bar, Yang Bingtian drank the fine wine that Ji Dong brewed every day. He would also give Ji Dong some advice on cultivation and explain some more profound yin and yang magician knowledge. However, perhaps because he did not have much confidence in Ji Dong's yin and yang balanced body, he did not ask about Ji Dong's situation. Standing there, Ji Dong did not even raise his hands, because as a 1st level apprentice, he could not release flames. With a slight thought, a star appeared on his forehead. It was the red and blue star that represented a 1st level apprentice. The lone star was exactly the same as when he had just used the crystal crown. Chapter 19. Ji Dong, Grade 1 Fire Elemental Apprentice, failed. Xia Tian frowned as he announced Ji Dong's result. The dissatisfaction and disappointment in his eyes were obvious. Yang Bingtian, who was sitting in front of Ji Dong, also sighed. His eyes were filled with disappointment. Even though he knew that it would be extremely difficult for Ji Dong to become a yin and yang magician, since he had given him the crystal crown, he still had a glimmer of hope. However, it seemed that there was no progress in the past year. The teachers couldn't help but frown as they looked at Jidong. Obviously, if this continued, no matter how hard Jidong tried, he wouldn't be able to condense the yin-yang crown. Xia Tian said in a deep voice, "Okay, end of the first year's final exam is over. Leave the hall in order. Jidong, you stay." The first-year students walked out one by one. Bisso and Carr walked at the back. When they passed the rostrum, they saw Hyoheim's eyes were filled with worry. According to the rules of the Fire Academy, no matter what age, if one failed the exam, they would be expelled. This was because failing the exam meant that they wouldn't have the chance to become a yin and yang magician. Continuing to study would be a waste of time. This would affect the enrollment rate and the reputation of the academy. At the same time, it was good for the students to be expelled. After all, even if they couldn't become a yin and yang magician, they could still learn other things while they were still young. The first year, students walked out one by one, leaving only the teachers and Jidong standing in front of the rostrum. Xia Tian came to Jidong's side and said in a deep voice, "Jidong, you should know the rules of the academy. In the past year, the academy has given you the best guidance, but you still haven't made any progress. There are only two possibilities. One is that you haven't practiced hard this year, so you can't improve your strength. The other is that your talent isn't suitable to become a yin and yang magician. As your homeroom teacher, no matter the reason, I have to expel you." Before last night, Jidong was full of confidence for today's exam. Naturally, he didn't think about this problem. At this moment, when Mr. Xia Tian made the decision to expel him, he couldn't help but be surprised. The quality of teaching in the Fire Academy was quite good. This year, he had learned a lot. Moreover, there was another important reason why he didn't want to leave the academy. If he left, where would he find the money to buy a private bar with most of the best alcohol on the market? Without a bar, how was he going to mix drinks for the Flaming Bar? If mixing drinks for Din Yangbing Tian was his job, then mixing drinks for the Flaming Bar was his biggest wish. Thinking of this, Jidong said eagerly, "Mr. Xia Tian, I've really tried my best. Please give me another chance. I'll definitely pass the exam next year." Xia Tian frowned and shook his head. "Jidong, people have a few chances in their lives. Since you didn't grasp it, then you've missed the opportunity. The school rules are ironclad. Since you failed the exam, you're not qualified to continue studying in the academy. Moreover, your yin and yang attribute is balanced, so you're indeed not suitable to practice the yin and yang magician. It's just a waste of time to continue. Go back and pack your things. I'll send you out of the academy tomorrow. Perhaps there's a better path for you." At this moment, a sharp voice came from the teacher's chair. "Xia Tian, he's just a piece of trash. Why are you wasting so much time talking to him? Hurry up and get him a leave. There's still 5 years waiting for our exam." Jidong looked in the direction of the voice. It was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He had a cold expression, fair skin, and a sharp voice. He didn't even need to ask to know that this was the teacher of the Fuhui series. He hadn't noticed him before. Xia Tian turned his head and glared at the teacher. "Mr. Lu Jun, please watch your words. My student isn't a piece of trash." Lu Jun snorted and said, "He's not a piece of trash. He's still a level 1 apprentice after a year. I really don't understand how he was allowed to enter the academy. Yin and yang are balanced. This is a rare piece of trash that only appears once in 100 years. You're lucky to find him." "You!" Xia Tian was suddenly enraged. With his fiery temper, he turned his head and was about to rush forward. Enough! Yang Bingtian finally opened his mouth. He waved his hand at Xia Tian, signaling him to calm down. At the same time, he looked at the teacher named Lu Jun and said, "Mr. Lu, please watch your words. No matter what kind of student he is, since he came to our Fire Academy to study, he is a part of the academy. There are many reasons why he didn't do well in the exam. I don't want to hear the same words in the future. We have to respect every student." Lu Jun didn't say anything. Yang Bingtian finally looked at Hyoheim and sighed. In front of so many teachers, he couldn't show favoritism even if he wanted to. He gave Jidong the 2 crystal crowns, which meant he had tried his best. Although the result was within his expectation, the dean didn't want to accept it. Drinking the wine made by Ji Dong every day had become a habit. At the same time, he had really fallen in love with this quiet kid who was good at making drinks. Ji Dong, this is the Academy's rule. I hope you understand. You can go back now. Although Yang Bingtian didn't want to, he felt the same as Xia Tian. Letting Ji Dong continue to study was a waste of time. Moreover, he didn't pass the exam, and the other teachers wouldn't let him go either. He had decided to send Ji Dong to the Bartenders Guild after all the exams were over. That should be the best stage for Ji Dong. At this moment, the door of the auditorium was suddenly pushed open, for people walked in. Who is so rude? Lu Jun, the teacher of the Fuhua series, didn't have a place to vent his anger. The teachers of the Fire Academy were all here, and the people who came in from the outside could only be students. The people who came in were indeed students, but when Lu Jun saw the person walking in the front, he couldn't continue his scolding. The expression on his face was replaced by a smile. On the contrary, Xia Tian frowned and said in a low voice, "Who let you in? Don't you know it's the final exam? Zhu Tian, you're already a 6th grade student. Don't you know the rule?" Of the 4 people who came in, 3 were familiar to Ji Dong: Car, Bisso, and Zhu Gui. The one walking in the front was a slender young man who looked 16 or 17 years old. He had a dignified appearance and looked at least 60% similar to Zhu Gui. There was an indescribable quality about him. Although he was young, he walked with a majestic gait. "I'm sorry, Mr. Xiatian. Teachers, deans, I'm sorry to disturb you. I heard from Gui that there is a junior in the 1st grade who cultivates both yin and yang elements at the same time. I hope you can give this junior a chance and let him try for another year." Zhu Tian's voice was clear and powerful, neither servile nor overbearing. Ji Dong looked at him in surprise, then looked at Zhu Gui next to him and the anxious Car and Bisso behind him. He didn't expect that Zhu Gui would find someone to help him. Xia Tian said in a low voice, "Zhu Tian, you should know that this is the school's rule." Zhu Tian smiled and said, "Mr. Xia Tian, rules are dead, but people are alive. This junior Ji Dong cultivates 2 elements, which is not common. Naturally, it is different from our normal cultivation. Maybe his results will explode next year?" "Enough," Xia Tian said in a low voice. "Zhu Tian, you have to remember that you're only a student of the Fire Academy. You have no right to interfere with any of the school's decisions. Get out of here immediately. Since you broke into the hall, you will be punished to run 1 lap around the city." Zhu Tian was stunned for a moment. He couldn't help but look at Xia with a strange gaze. He then turned his head to look at Zhu Gui beside him with a helpless expression on his face. Mr. Zhu Tian is right. Rules are dead, but people are alive. Ji Dong didn't pass the assessment, but let him decide his own life. Yang Bingtian and Hyoheim said, "Ji Dong, you have 2 choices now. One is to leave the school, and the other is, if you want, you can attend the next year's classes as an auditing student. You don't need to pass any assessment before graduation, but you are not a real student of the Fire Academy. Of course, if you change your mind, you can leave the school at any time. At the end of the 6 years, you have to pass the graduation assessment to be a graduate of the Fire Academy." Auditing student? Auditing student is fine too. As long as he didn't leave the school, Ji Dong didn't mind. What surprised him was that no one, including the teacher named Lu Jun, objected to President Yang's obvious act of shielding Ji Dong. "I'm willing to stay as an auditing student," Ji Dong answered immediately. Yang Bingtian smiled and said, "Okay, you can all leave. But you heard what Mr. Xiatian said. Ji Dong, they're here to plead for you. You have to accept the punishment together with them. You have to run around the city." "Yes." Outside the hall, Bisso and Car cheered at the same time. They hugged Ji Dong and said, "Boss, you don't have to be persuaded to leave. It's great that we can stay together until graduation. It's not necessarily a good thing for him." Zhu Tian's clear voice sounded. Bisso and Car looked at him in surprise. Zhu Tian looked at Ji Dong and said, "I have never heard of a person with a balance of yin and yang physique being able to cultivate to become a yin and yang magician. Junior, if you want to achieve something, you really have to work hard." Ji Dong said sincerely, "Zhu Tian, thank you." Zhu Tian waved his hand and said, don't thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank little Gui. I'll go and complete the punishment first. Goodbye." As he said this, he turned his body, and without seeing how he did it, he had already leaped out like an arrow. Wearing the 3rd Fire Department uniform, he had run out of the school in the blink of an eye. It was as if he was flying close to the ground. Ji Dong and the other two couldn't help but secretly praise him. So fast. Ji Dong's eyes turned to Zhu Gui. Just as he was about to speak, Zhu Gui said first, "You don't have to thank me. You were a member of the 3rd Fire Department in the 1st year. Moreover, I know you didn't make no progress because you were lazy, so I helped you." Ji Dong was taken aback and said, "How do you know I'm not lazy?" Zhu Gui said lightly, "A lazy person can silently run and exercise strength on the field every day, rain or shine. However, whether or not you can become an yin and yang magician depends on you. No one can help you in this regard. I hope that during the graduation assessment, you can be my opponent." After speaking, she also turned and ran in the direction of Zhu Tian. Looking at Zhu Gui's back as he left, Bissot couldn't help saying, "This tomboy isn't without redeeming qualities. Why do I feel that she's a little cute today?" Carr snorted angrily and said, "Forget it. I don't know who is thinking about taking revenge on her every day." Bissot said, "That's a different thing. I haven't forgotten the humiliation from back then. However, this tomboy doesn't seem to be so annoying." Ji Dong said, "Can you tell me what's going on? Why is it that when that Zhu Tian appeared, the teachers seemed to give him face?" Carr said, "Zhu Tian is an influential figure in our academy. Boss, you really don't pay attention to what's going on outside the window. Zhu Tian completed the yin-yang crown when he was in his 4th year and began to cultivate both magic and magic at the same time. He will graduate this year and is one of the students our academy will send to a higher school. At the same time, he is also Zhu Gui's brother. Just now, when we came out of the auditorium, we felt that something was wrong. We were afraid that you would be persuaded to stay. Just when we were at our wits' end, Zhu Gui ran to find her brother. You know what happened next? This time, it's really all thanks to Zhu Gui." Ji Dong nodded and said, "I will return this favor sooner or later." Bissot said with some worry, "Boss, just now Zhu Tian said that continuing your studies in the academy might delay you." "You?" Ji Dong laughed and said, "What? Don't you have confidence in me? Since I chose to stay, I definitely won't give up. However, you guys have to work hard too. Since Zhu Tian could condense the yin-yang crown in his 4th year, why can't you guys? Let's work hard together." The three of them put their hands together. They could see each other's encouragement and confidence. When Ji Dong returned to the dormitory, he clearly felt relaxed. He could finally stay, and there shouldn't be any trouble before graduation. This academic year was about to end, and it would be a 3-month holiday. He definitely had to stay in the academy. Since he had nowhere to go, he had to talk to the Flaming Bar tonight and see if he could increase his cultivation time at her place. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a waste? Starting over again would be a brighter future for cultivation. Chapter 20. 3 years later, in the evening. Quietly sitting cross-legged on the bed, Ji Dong, who was already 14 years old, looked a lot more mature. At the age of 14, he had grown to nearly 7 meters tall. Perhaps it was because he had lived 2 lives, but now he seemed more mature. Yang Bingtian's 3 years as an auditing student were quite free and unfettered. When Yang Bingtian decided to let him stay, he had his own selfish motives. At least, if Ji Dong stayed, he could continue to taste good wine. Auditing student had its advantages. Ji Dong could go to the 3rd Fire series or the Fuhua series at any time to listen to the knowledge he wanted to learn. At the same time, he had more time to practice. After several coaxing and pestering, 3 years ago, the Flaming Bar agreed to let him stay at the Earth Core Lake for 2 more hours. In the past 3 years, he still did not waste a single moment. His 4th year here was coming to an end. In this Fire Academy, no one knew that Ji Dong already had enough amazing strength. His body was like a devouring abyss. The surface of his skin was constantly flashing red and blue lights. The 3rd Fire Element and 4th Fire Element in the air were crazily pouring into his body. On his forehead, a total of 5 complete royal stars were neatly arranged. Except for the royal star in the center, which was shining alternately red and blue. The royal star on the left of his forehead was blue above and red below, and the two royal stars on the right were red above and blue below. Obviously, the left half of his body was dominated by the Fuhua series magic, and the right half by the third fire element magic, which created such a strange royal star. The 5 complete royal stars represented only one meaning: a level 10 third fire element apprentice. Yes, after 3 years of hard practice, plus the time spent at the Earth Core Lake, Jidong's strength had made great progress. With the 2 fire seeds given to him by the Flaming Bar as a starting point, the Bingwu Primordial Yang Sacred Fire and the Dingxi Infernal Spiritual Fire had both reached the level of a level 10 apprentice not long ago. As agreed 3 years ago, the talented Bissot and Carr had also reached the same level not long ago and began to condense the yin-yang crown. Due to their outstanding performance, they had now entered seclusion under the guidance of their teachers, Xiak Tian and Xiao Tian, to condense the yin-yang crown that belonged to them. Compared to them, Zhu Gui had already condensed her yin-yang crown at the end of the 3rd year. At the same time, she did not continue to stay in the Fire Academy and was directly recommended to a higher school. It was said that she went to the same advanced Yin and Yang Magician Academy as her brother, Zhu Tian. As for the specific location, Ji Dong and the others did not know. Carr and Bissot became the focus of the academy after Zhu Gui, but no one paid attention to Ji Dong, who was just an auditing student. Even Yang Bingtian rarely mentioned cultivation to Ji Dong. The old dean was kind and had offered to send Ji Dong to the Bartenders Guild many times, but Ji Dong had always refused. The half an hour in the evening, which was suitable for cultivating the balance of yin and yang, was soon over. Ji Dong opened his eyes, which flashed with a faint golden light. His gaze fell on his hands, and with a thought, 2 flames suddenly appeared in his palms. The left palm was blue fire ding, and the right palm was red fire bing. One blue and one red. It was very strange. Then, the expression in Ji Dong's eyes changed. His left pupil suddenly became darker and deeper, and his right pupil turned golden. In an instant, his entire temperament changed, and an aura of pity was released from his body. The 5 stars on his forehead also changed at the same time. The original red was replaced by gold, and the blue was replaced by black. The gold and black lights intertwined with each other, and at the same time, the flames on his hand also changed. The golden Bing Wu Primordial Yang Sacred Fire was filled with a majestic aura of extreme yang. The black Ding Si Netherworld Spiritual Fire was filled with a haze of extreme yin and softness. With a flash of light, the gold and black colors quietly retreated and returned to the red and blue colors from before. The divine yin-yang lock technique had quietly hidden Ji Dong's ultimate dual flames. The so-called divine yin-yang lock was actually a way to use one's will to control the attributes of one's own magic power. Under the condition that the source of the magic power did not change, the yin and yang attributes would be reduced, and the output of the flames would only have the effect of ordinary Bing and Ding magic power, so that no flaws would be exposed. This was undoubtedly a very useful ability, and it was the best way to hide one's true strength. Not only could it control the fire attribute, but could also control the amount of magic power Ji Dong released. Within the 5 stars, Ji Dong could now release whatever level of ability he wanted, and the stars on his forehead would change accordingly. Even after condensing the yin-yang crown in the future, he could also control the degree of power he released to confuse his opponents. Retracting the flames, a satisfied smile appeared on Ji Dong's face. It had been 4 years since he came here, and he could finally advance to the level of a true yin and yang magician. The Flaming Bar said yesterday that he should be able to condense the yin-yang crown tonight. A sense of anticipation that he had not felt for a long time filled his heart. However, before going to the Earth's core, he did not forget to make a glass of fine wine for Yang Bingtian. He had to keep his promises. This was not just a matter of integrity, it was also his principle. Holding the glass of wine, Ji Dong arrived outside Yang Bingtian's office and knocked on the door. "Is it Ji Dong? Come in." Yang Bingtian's deep voice rang out, and only then did Ji Dong push the door open and enter. He walked to Yang Bingtian's desk and put down the glass of wine. Yang Bingtian lifted his head to look at him and could not help but feel a little dazed. The child from 4 years ago had now grown into a handsome young man. For the past 4 years, Yang Bingtian delivered fine wine at the same time every day, even when he was sick. This tenacity and perseverance alone was far beyond that of his peers. President Yang, I'm going out. After putting down the glass of wine, Jidong said goodbye to Yang Bingtian as usual and prepared to leave. Jidong, wait a minute. Yang Bingtian seemed to have made up his mind. Puzzled, Jidong asked, is there anything else? Yang Bingtian sighed and said, Jidong, you've been in the academy for 4 years, and you've been mixing wine for me for 4 years, but I'm unable to fulfill my promise to help you become a true yin and yang magician. I can't delay you any longer. Go back and pack your things. After this semester ends, I'll send you to the Bartenders Guild. I can't ruin your future because of my selfishness. Jidong was stunned for a moment, and a smile appeared on his face. He said, this is my own choice. I like this place, so I'm staying. Yang Bingtian said, I know that you have a good relationship with Bissot and Carr, but they might be able to condense the yin-yang crown in the near future. For such outstanding prodigies, the Academy will directly recommend them. I'll exercise the Dean's recommendation and directly recommend them to higher education institutions to further their studies. They're leaving too, so why do you still want to stay? Although you're still young, this is the most important period for you. Jidong nodded and said, thank you, President Yang. Let's talk about it after this semester ends. Let me think about it. Yang Bingtian picked up the cocktail with a smile and said, don't worry. Although I can't send you to the headquarters of the Bartenders Guild, I can at least recommend you to the Bartenders Guild of the Southern Fire Empire. This old drunkard will more or less have some face. I believe that you'll have a bright future there. In fact, I'm more reluctant to see you go than anyone else. Except for the wine you mix, I can't drink any other good wine now. After saying goodbye to Yang Bingtian, Jidong went back to his room and thought to himself, President Yang, I'll definitely give you a surprise in the final exam of the 4th year. I hope to leave with Carr and Bissot, but I don't want to be separated from them. Zhuguei, although I can't be your opponent in the Fire Academy, I'll definitely catch up with you in the higher education institutions. Standing behind the bar, Jidong's face gradually revealed a trace of a smile. His gentle smile was filled with memories and feelings that grew deeper and deeper in the past 4 years. Even if it was just a crush in his heart, this feeling became deeper and deeper. Nobody knew when a mixer had jumped into his hand. He didn't even need to use his eyes to look at it. The bottles had already been tipped over in his hand. The flying mixer brought dazzling colors as it danced in his hand. His focused emotions were released without reservation. Pouring the wine into the glass, he placed his right hand on his chest and softly called the name that he would never forget. The red lotus swept over and enveloped Jidong's body. Under the faint red light, he had already disappeared quietly. The familiar warmth and the surging dual attribute fire element quickly enveloped Jidong's body. Even though he had never ventured deep into it, nor did he have the ability to do so, he knew the situation of the geocentric lake like the back of his hand. After all, he had already spent more than 1,000 nights here. Are you ready? The gentle voice of the flaming bar sounded. It seemed to be condensed from light as it appeared out of thin air in front of Jidong and took the glass from his hand. It had become Jidong's habit to take a deep look at the flaming bar. It was as if every time he came here, he wanted to brand the figure of the flaming bar more deeply in his heart. It had been 4 years, and he had never asked about Raging Flame's origins. For years had not left any traces of time on Raging Flame's body. She was just as breathtaking as when Jidong first saw her, and she was still as perfect as ever. I think I'm ready. Jidong raised his hands. There was no need for him to hide anything here. The golden Bang Wu primordial yang, sacred fire, and the black Ding Si underworld spiritual fire rose from his palms at the same time. They rose to a height of a few meters, and the 5 gold and black dual-colored stars on his forehead also became unusually dazzling. The flaming bar Hyoheim nodded and said, Since you're ready, let's begin. For you, this is the most important moment in the early stages of cultivation. No matter what you feel later, you must not waver. I can only be a guide. The real condensation of yin-yang crown still depends on your own strength. Jidong clenched his fists tightly. With a poof, the flames on his hands extinguished at the same time. He said, "I will definitely succeed." These simple words were filled with unparalleled determination and perseverance. There was also the pride from his previous life that had never disappeared. The flaming bar slowly tasted the wine and moved his feet lightly. Jidong only saw a blur in front of his eyes. The flaming bar had already circled around his body. Immediately after, Jidong clearly saw that in the geocentric lake below them, magma surged up, and a huge pillar of fire with a diameter of 5 meters shot up into the sky. Jidong was not surprised by such a change, nor would he waver. He believed that the flaming bar would not harm him. The pillar of magma stopped under their feet. The flaming bar emptied one of her hands and pressed down casually. The pillar of fire immediately seemed to solidify, and a circular platform appeared at the top. A very familiar pattern appeared in front of Jidong. It was a Tai Chi yin-yang fish. The only difference was that the white in the yin-yang fish had turned into gold. Tai Chi was divided into yin and yang, and yin and yang were yin and yang. How did the flaming bar know about this pattern in this world? Before Jidong could think too much, the flaming bar said, "Sit down with your legs crossed. You can start now. Don't think too much. I'll always be by your side." There was no need for the flaming bar to deliberately move. Jidong sat down in the middle of the yin-yang fish. He was surprised to find that the dual elemental fire around his body was no longer the usual third fire and fourth fire. Instead, it was the same as his current elemental source, the third yang element and the fourth yin element. It was obvious that the flaming bar had created the most suitable environment for him to condense the yin-yang crown. Closing his eyes, Jidong crossed his hands between his legs. Other than his thumb, he crossed his other 4 fingers together. His palms were facing up, and his thumbs were facing each other. Just like his own yin and yang balanced physique, he maintained a relatively balanced state of his body at this moment. The dual elemental magic in his body lit up at the same time, and the 5 dual-colored stars on his forehead became exceptionally clear. After 4 years of hard work, he was finally starting to condense his own yin-yang crown. In these 4 years, he had learned enough theoretical knowledge. The yin-yang crown was the symbol of the yin and yang magician, and at the same time, the representation of the yin and yang magician's strength. There was a limit to the human body's tolerance. Even the most pure of the 5 elements, the earth element, would have a strong destructive effect on the human body when it reached a certain concentration. Therefore, when the yin and yang magician's cultivation reached a certain level, and his body could no longer tolerate any more elemental energy, he would need to condense the yin-yang crown to achieve his goal of continuous improvement. Therefore, the yin-yang crown was also the source and foundation of the yin and yang magician's magic. Chapter 21. To put it more accurately, the elemental energy that a human's basic body could withstand was at the level of a level 10 apprentice. Although the human body would be continuously improved by the elements as one's cultivation increased after one surpassed the level of a level 10 apprentice, the speed of improvement could not keep up with the speed of the increase of magic power. If one forcefully cultivated, they would suffer the backlash of their own magic power. The yin-yang crown was the condensation and compression of the magic power in one's body into a strange elemental body. Because of the compression and condensation, the magic power absorbed into one's body would not affect one's body. This was also known as the yin and yang magician's origin yin-yang crown. When a magician needed to fight, they would release their origin yin-yang crown and quickly combine with the elemental energy in the outside world to form an yin-yang crown above the soul master's head. Because the origin yin-yang crown had a strong attraction effect on the magic power of the yin and yang magician, a layer of yin and yang shield would appear on the surface of the yin and yang magician's body. The stronger the yin and yang magician, the stronger the shield would be. Simply put, even if a low-level yin and yang magician launched a sneak attack on a high-level yin and yang magician, the attack might not be able to break the opponent's self-formed shield. At the same time, with the yin-yang shield formed by the origin yin-yang crown, the free energy outside the body would absorb the elemental energy in the air and integrate it into the magician's body. Therefore, after condensing a yin-yang crown, a magician's cultivation speed would be much faster than before. After condensing a yin-yang crown, how to improve the strength of the origin yin-yang crown was the direction of cultivation for all yin and yang magicians. The stronger one's origin, the more energy they could absorb from the outside world, and the difference in strength would increase exponentially. This was also how the rating of a yin and yang magician came about. Right now, what Jidong needed to do was to first complete his own yin-yang crown and enter another level of cultivation for the yin and yang magician. Only after entering this level would he be recognized as a true yin and yang magician, and he could register with the guild and have the professional identity of a yin and yang magician. Of course, for a normal yin and yang magician, they would condense either a yang crown or a yin crown. Right now, what Jidong wanted to do was to condense a yin-yang crown and then enter the next level of cultivation for a yin and yang magician. Only then would he be recognized as a true yin and yang magician, could he register in the guild, and have the professional identity of a yin and yang magician. For ordinary yin and yang magicians, condensing their own yin-yang crown was the process of compressing their own magic. When the magic was compressed to a certain extent, it would naturally form the origin yin-yang crown, and the magic would accumulate, thus completing the process of advancement. However, when Jidong began to condense it, he immediately discovered the problem. As a dual attribute magician, what he had to do was not only compress and condense, but also maintain the balance of yin and yang of his own attributes. In the process of compression, he had to maintain the balance of third fire and fourth fire. This was simply an impossible task. In fact, in the history of the yin and yang magician, there have been people with a balanced yin and yang physique who had undergone cultivation. Among them, there was no lack of people who had good comprehension and were willing to work hard. However, the reason why they did not succeed in the end was because they were stuck at the stage of condensing the yin-yang crown, compressing and condensing magic, and the magic was constantly changing shape in the process of being compressed. How could it be possible to maintain an absolute balance? Even a relative balance could not be maintained. At this time, the speed at which a magician absorbed the elements from the outside world was constantly changing. Even Jidong's current mental strength could not complete the control, especially when he now possessed the extreme yang-yang sacred fire and the extreme yin-yang spiritual fire. These two types of flames were much harder to control than ordinary third fire and fourth fire, as their attributes were too strong. Initially, it was fine when they were on their own, but now that Jidong wanted to compress them, these two flames with different attributes naturally had to be fused together in order to compress them. In this case, the extreme attributes of each other would strongly repel each other, causing a huge problem for Jidong. He had just controlled the two types of ultimate fire to come into contact, and he immediately encountered a problem. Boom! Jidong felt as if his chest was about to explode. The Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire and the Ding-Si spiritual fire pulsed wildly as they collided with each other. It was as if his body was about to explode. He tried his best to control them, but how could the chaos caused by the collision of the two types of ultimate fire be so easy to control? The two balls of mana were like enemies that had met. Their eyes were exceptionally bloodshot as they attacked each other crazily. Jidong's chest became their battlefield. It had been a long time since he had felt hot, but at this moment, he felt as if his entire body was about to combust. His heartbeat suddenly increased by a few times, and his entire body was sweating profusely. When these two tyrannical balls of ultimate fire collided with each other, they were like magnets that attracted each other. Even if Jidong wanted to separate them and stop the process of the yin-yang crown's condensation, it was already impossible for him to do so. However, even so, Jidong was not worried at all. While he tried his best to control them, he was still able to remain calm. There was no other reason than the fact that the flaming bar was right next to him. She was the ruler of the 18th level of the Earth's core, the Empress of the Flaming Bar. What did he have to worry about? At this moment, the Flaming Bar made her move. She could not afford to wait in such a situation. If the two types of ultimate fire were to clash for too long, Ji-dong would immediately suffer an irreversible and destructive blow. Therefore, just as Ji-dong was feeling intense pain, the Flaming Bar's slender hand had already pressed against his chest. Break! A clear voice was heard from the Flaming Bar's mouth. Ji-dong immediately felt that everything in his chest had stopped. The two balls of ultimate fire that were still colliding with each other a second ago had stopped just like that when they came into contact with each other. Immediately after that, another explosion that was much more intense than the previous one rang out in his chest. Amidst the loud explosion, Ji-dong did not feel pain. His mind was blank, and his six senses were at their lowest. He could only rely on his will to sense that the ultimate fire mana that he had painstakingly cultivated for 4 years in his chest felt as if it had been smashed by a giant hammer. It shattered with a loud bang, transforming into countless streams of fire that surged into every corner of his body. Every wisp of the ultimate fire burned his meridians and flowed rapidly through his body. Meanwhile, the yin-yang fish that was formed from the Flaming Bar's mana also released an enormous amount of Bing-Wu and Ding-Si elements that surged into Ji-dong's body. The Flaming Bar's expression was very calm. She did not forget to slowly savor her wine. To her, Ji-dong's mana was too weak right now. She could easily control it. As long as she was around, there would not be any problems. Gradually, his six senses returned to him. An incomparably intense pain immediately caused Ji-dong's body to tremble. His skin, meridians, bones, and internal organs felt as if they were burning fiercely. Golden or black flames were continuously spewing out of his orifices. This was a true calcination. This was not something that would happen when an ordinary Bing-Wu or Fu-Hui series yin and yang magician condensed the yin-yang crown. Otherwise, he would either be burned to death or exhaust the mana that he had painstakingly cultivated. However, it was different for Ji-dong. Although the mana that he cultivated was greatly depleted, it was immediately replenished by the Bing-Wu and Ding-Si elements that surged into his body from the outside world. Now, he was like a piece of metal filled with impurities. He was being forged in these two extreme flames. The temperature of the forging gradually increased, and the pain became more and more intense. At this moment, the Flaming Bar's eyes revealed a serious expression. It was not serious about the control of energy. Instead, she had to carefully observe the condition of Ji-dong's body. Once Ji-dong was unable to bear it, she had to stop the forging process. Condensing the yin-yang crown was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for any yin and yang magician. Forging his body at this time and laying down the foundation was the most important. It would determine Ji-dong's future cultivation prospects. Therefore, the Flaming Bar had to make sure that the forging process reached the limit that Ji-dong could bear. Very quickly, Ji-dong's body had basically reached the requirements that Raging Flames had expected. However, she was surprised to find that, contrary to what she had expected, Ji-dong's body had still not reached its limit, even though he was struggling in pain. Although he was struggling in pain, his willpower was extremely strong. He did not show any signs of collapsing. Willpower was usually the strongest strength of a human. As long as one's willpower could hold on, the human body would be able to explode with unimaginable potential. Ji-dong's entire body seemed to be burning. The Flaming Bar had experienced that kind of pain before, so she naturally understood how terrifying it was. The Flaming Bar stopped drinking. The Flaming Bar's face revealed a solemn expression. Although Ji-dong could still hold on, she had to watch him closely. Logically speaking, he had already exceeded his limit and could collapse at any time. At the same time, the Flaming Bar had a look of admiration in her eyes. It had been 4 years. Ji-dong had been repeating the same cultivation routine every day. However, the cocktails that he made for her every day gave her a different taste and the same feeling. Although the Flaming Bar had sensed that Ji-dong's cocktails seemed to have a subtle influence on her since a few years ago, she could not bear to get rid of this feeling. Unknowingly, for years had passed. This young man, who had been like a day for 4 years, had also slowly grown up under her watch. No one knew better than her how much effort Ji-dong had put into his cultivation during these 4 years. He had never slacked off for a single day. Otherwise, how could he have reached the level where he could condense the yin-yang crown as a rank 10 apprentice in just 3 short years after she had given him the seeds of the 2 ultimate fire? If everything in a flaming bar was said to be perfect in Ji-dong's eyes, then after 4 years, the flaming bar could not find a single flaw in what Ji-dong had done. There were even times when the flaming bar wanted to tell Ji-dong to rest for a day. However, she did not say in the end. This was because she knew that such persistence would bring great benefits to Ji-dong in the future. As the calcination continued, Ji-dong's body was like a ball of flames. It was sometimes golden and sometimes black. Due to the extreme pain, his face was a little distorted. The impurities in his body had long been calcined by the extreme yin and yang flames. These 2 types of flames had also completely integrated into every part of his body. The flaming bar was in charge of this calcination process in order to make his body even purer. In terms of cultivation, the flaming bar would not help him. Only the ability that he had obtained through continuous hard work was the most valuable. External forces would only affect his future. If Ji-dong knew what the flaming bar was trying to guide his cultivation, he would definitely be shocked. Unfortunately, it would be a long, long time before he found out about this. That's enough. The flaming bar could not bear to see Ji-dong persevere in such agony. If he continued, it would not bring any more benefits to his body. The flaming bar had done enough. The hand that was pressed against Ji-dong's chest slowly rotated, then pulled back forcefully. Instantly, Ji-dong felt as if all the raging flames in his body had found their source and were gathering towards his chest once again. The wine glass in the flaming bar's hand floated in midair. She placed her hands on her chest, one above the other, with her palms facing each other. Her palms formed the shape of a claw. Her right hand turned golden like the Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire, while her left hand turned dark like the Dingxi underworld spiritual fire. Intense golden and black streams of air fluctuated violently between her palms. Meanwhile, the flames in Ji-dong's body seemed to be attracted by the flames between the flaming bar's palms. After they gathered at his chest, the 2 types of ultimate fire no longer repelled each other. Instead, they fused together and spun violently, forming a vortex of gold and black. The flaming bar's voice rang in Ji-dong's mind. Although the Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire and the Dingxi underworld spiritual fire are of extreme yang and extreme yin respectively, their true natures are the same. However, there is no difference in their true nature. They are both a type of fire. This yin-yang vortex is the fusion of the 2 fire source energies in your body. From now on, you are a true yin-yang demon master. The dual-colored energy in the flaming bar's palms had already condensed into a black and gold pearl. It was arranged in the shape of a yin and yang fish. With a flick of her fingers, it sank into Ji-dong's chest and instantly fused with his ultimate yin and yang sacred fire. A special crown had already condensed in the center of his chest, which was also in the center of the black and gold vortex. This crown did not have a fixed color. As Ji-dong breathed, it changed between gold and black. The 2 colors flickered alternately, but all the pain disappeared in an instant. A feeling of power that he had never felt before flowed through his body. Ji-dong felt as if the world was under his control. Everything in his body appeared clearly in his consciousness. Not only was the yin and yang origin crown in his chest changing colors, but every part of his body was also changing between gold and black. Chapter 22. What Ji-dong didn't know was that only the purest elemental body would cause elemental changes to appear in his body as he breathed. If it was a single elemental body, then the changes would be light and dark. However, Ji-dong's dual elemental body had created the miraculous sight of the 2 colors of ultimate fire changing with each other. This elemental body was also the greatest benefit of forging with dual ultimate fires. The black and gold vortex in his chest didn't disappear. It was still circling around that bizarre crown. Without a doubt, this crown that was constantly changing colors was Ji-dong's origin yin-yang crown. It wasn't just a simple yin-yang crown or a yang crown, but an yin-yang crown. Gold and black lights also appeared around his body, spiraling up and condensing above his head, forming a bizarre yin-yang crown. Half of the yin-yang crown was black, while the other half was white. The two peaks in the center of the yin-yang crown served as the dividing line. At the center of the yin-yang crown, flames of gold and black intertwined together burned, representing the level of a crown. At the center of the crown ring, half a crown star appeared on the white side of the right side of the yin-yang crown. This half a crown star was a black star with a black background. Below it was a black outline, as if two half stars, one black and one gold, were superimposed on each other. It was quite different from when Ji-dong hadn't condensed a yin-yang crown. With this ultimate dual fire yin-ding yin-yang crown as the starting point, a layer of golden light enveloped Ji-dong's body. Outside the constantly changing flames, the condensation of the yin-yang crown, which was the most crucial point for any yin and yang magician, was finally completed. From now on, Ji-dong was no longer at the level of an apprentice. He had officially entered the second level of the 10 levels of yin and yang magician, the scholar realm. He was now a first-level scholar of the dual fire element. All the lights gradually retracted. The yin-yang crown that appeared above Ji-dong's head also quietly fused into his body. When he opened his eyes, his entire temperament changed under the effect of the origin yin-yang crown. His black eyes, in particular, seemed to have been stripped of all impurities. They were bright and clear like black gemstones. "Thank you, Flaming Bar," Ji-dong said sincerely. The moment he began to condense the yin-yang crown, he knew that if he only cultivated diligently, even if he put in 32 times the effort, he wouldn't be able to become a true yin and yang magician. Attributes repelled each other. It was impossible for him to fuse the two attributes into one with his own strength. It was all thanks to the Flaming Bar. Raging Flame smiled faintly. Her smile would always attract Ji-dong's dull gaze. "What are you thanking me for?" "Little Ji-dong, according to what you humans say, you should be calling me teacher now, right?" Ji-dong came back to his senses, and to Raging Flame's surprise, he immediately replied, "No, I can't call you teacher." His answer was resolute and decisive, without even the slightest bit of thinking. Raging Flame said in surprise, "Do you think I'm not qualified to be your teacher?" "No, of course not." Ji-dong hurriedly explained, "I'm sorry, Flaming Bar. I really can't call you teacher. You're so beautiful and so young. Wouldn't calling you teacher make you sound old?" The Flaming Bar chuckled. All the flames in the Earth's core lake paled in comparison. "You really know how to talk. If you don't want to call me that, then don't call me that. Our underground world doesn't care about these things anyway." Ji-dong could barely tell the difference. But how could he say what he really thought? The only thing he could think of was that if he called the Flaming Bar teacher, then even if he was powerful enough one day, he wouldn't have the right to tell her what was in his heart. Even though that goal was out of reach, Ji-dong wouldn't give up even if there was only a sliver of hope. Ji-dong lowered his head. He didn't dare to look at the Flaming Bar. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and say his love. He was the god of wine in his previous life. In this life, he actually felt inferior in front of this perfect woman. He was afraid that if he said what was in his heart, the Flaming Bar would never see him again. He didn't dare to take the risk. He really didn't dare. He knew that in the eyes of the Flaming Bar, he was just a child. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy that you've officially become a yin and yang magician?" The Flaming Bar asked with a smile when he saw that Ji-dong didn't speak. Ji-dong shook his head. His state of mind was much more stable now. He then raised his head and said, "I'm just a level 1 scholar. There's still a long way to go in the future. Naturally, it's not time for me to be happy yet." The Flaming Bar smiled and said, "Always giving yourself pressure is indeed a good mentality. However, excessive rigidity is easy to break. As a yin and yang dual fire elemental, you must remember to combine rigidity and gentleness. All right, now listen carefully. I'll tell you about your current state and how to use the dual fire elemental abilities. After completing the formation of the yin-yang crown, any yin and yang magician won't be able to use their will to guide the elemental energy to fuse with their body like before. Your yin-yang crown itself will have a huge attraction force. From this, your cultivation speed will increase by a lot in the future. Of course, the higher the rank, the more elemental energy will be required. This is a benefit for ordinary spirit masters. But for you, the formation of the yin-yang crown has even more benefits. The yin and yang balance that has been hindering your cultivation will no longer be an obstacle with the appearance of the yin-yang crown. As he said that, the flaming bar pointed at Jidong's chest and said, "You can feel it, right? Around your origin yin-yang crown, the Xingwu primordial yang sacred fire and the Dingxi netherworld spirit fire have formed a merged whirlpool. This whirlpool can not only help you better digest and absorb the fire elemental energy, but at the same time, it can also help you adjust the yin and yang balance in your body. In other words, even if you only absorb one type of fire elemental energy after absorbing it into your body, the yin-yang whirlpool will help you fuse it into your body and achieve the effect of yin and yang balance. From now on, other than here at my place in your human world, you will no longer be limited by the cultivation time. You can cultivate at any time." To Jidong, this was undoubtedly good news. Without the restriction of yin and yang balance, he no longer only had the two cultivation time periods of the evening and the morning. Even if he didn't come to the Earth's core lake, his cultivation speed would still increase greatly. The flaming bar continued, "What you need to focus on now is the control of your yin-yang whirlpool, which is the control of dual fire elemental mana. After having the yin-yang whirlpool, you can change your mana into the third fire element at any time, and you can also change it into the Fuhua series at any time, allowing yourself to become a single element magician or use two elements at the same time. But this requires you to have strong control to be able to use it freely. If you use it well and use the corresponding fire element at different times, it will allow you to have stronger adaptability than ordinary yin and yang magicians. But if you don't control it well, it will instead hinder your performance. Therefore, in the following cultivation, besides increasing your mana, you must also start to cultivate the control of your yin-yang whirlpool." Jidong asked, "How can I control the yin-yang whirlpool?" The flaming bar smiled and said, "Actually, it's not difficult. Controlling the yin-yang whirlpool is actually controlling the output of your yin and yang dual fire. These can be practiced through magic skills. You have officially become a yin and yang magician. It's also time to practice magic skills. Jidong, stretch out your hands. I'll give you two gifts." Jidong stretched out his hands, palms facing up, and said, "Flaming bar, you've already helped me a lot. I don't need any more gifts." The flaming bar shook his head and said, "These two things are of no use to me. Giving them to you will also save me a lot of trouble." As he spoke, the flaming bar walked in front of Jidong and held his hands. When the flaming bar held Jidong's hands, his heart couldn't help but tremble. The flaming bar's hands were soft and delicate, as if they were boneless. Jidong instinctively held onto the flaming bar, and his gaze became much more passionate. There was only one thought in his mind. If he could hold onto this pair of hands forever, he wouldn't have any regrets even if he died. However, before Jidong could enjoy this unusual warmth, two sharp pains suddenly came from the center of his palms. Even though Jidong had endured the pain when the yin and yang dual fire burned him, he couldn't help but groan in pain now. Even so, he couldn't bear to let go of the flaming bar's hands. The flaming bar was going to hold on to Jidong to prevent him from breaking free. But she realized that not only did Jidong not intend to let go, he was even trying his best to control the strength of his grip on her hands. He didn't clench them tightly due to the intense pain, as if he was afraid of hurting himself. The flaming bar only wanted to give him two important things, but at this moment, she couldn't help but have a strange feeling in her heart. Even though he was suffering such a painful blow, he didn't suspect her at all. He was even afraid of hurting her, so he didn't use all his strength to resist the pain, and instead used all his strength to control his hands. The flaming bar bit her lower lip lightly. A trace of surprise and a trace of gentleness flashed across the bottom of the flaming bar's eyes. She told herself in her heart, I really didn't entrust these two things to the wrong person. Ji-dong, why don't you ever let me down? Ji-dong didn't notice the change in the flaming bar's expression. To be more precise, he didn't notice the ability of the flaming bar's expression at all. A bone-piercing pain continuously came from the center of his palms. The yin-yang vortex in his chest was spinning at an unparalleled speed, and the origin of yin-yang crown was shining brightly. He clearly realized that there seemed to be something drilling into his body from the center of his palms. This thing that was drilling into his body was not something that he could stop at all. It quickly merged into the yin-yang vortex and origin of yin-yang crown, and even into his will. Black and gold were the only two colors left in Ji-dong's vision. His entire body was trembling violently in pain. It was a pain that even his soul was about to be stripped away. Meanwhile, the ultimate dual fire, one crown, yin-yang crown, appeared above his head once again. The half-crown flickered violently and gradually turned into a whole crown. Ji-dong's level had actually increased at this moment, from 1 crown level 1 scholar to 1 crown level 2 scholar. Flaming Bar looked at Ji-dong, who was trembling like sifting chaff, but did not make a sound and was still trying hard to control the strength of his hands. A hint of pity appeared in Flaming Bar's eyes, but she still did not use any of her power to help Ji-dong reduce his pain. Only those who had suffered the most would be able to rise above others. If she helped him a little, then the two things that she gave to Ji-dong would not be able to fuse completely with Ji-dong's body, and all her previous efforts would be in vain. Ever since Ji-dong came here and started cultivating, Flaming Bar actually did not help him much. She only helped him convert his flames and condense the yin-yang crown. Everything else was the result of Ji-dong's own hard work. Apart from the fact that Flaming Bar had always been observing Ji-dong, she was also building a solid foundation for him. Just like how the mana that Ji-dong had worked hard to cultivate for a year was used by Flaming Bar as fuel to convert his dual fire, she was deliberately delaying the time that Ji-dong needed to condense the yin-yang crown. The dual elemental body was the best reward for all of Ji-dong's efforts. Although he was not powerful yet, he had already built a foundation that ordinary people could not achieve. With a solid foundation, his future development would be faster and more stable. This was undoubtedly the best way of cultivation. Finally, after an unknown period of time, the unbearable pain faded, and Ji-dong's entire body slowly fell to the ground. After enduring the pain of condensing the yin-yang crown, coupled with the even more intense torture afterwards, although his willpower was strong enough, his body could no longer take it. After enduring with great difficulty, he fainted the moment he relaxed his mind. Flaming Bar gently pulled and hugged Ji-dong's body. Unfortunately, Ji-dong could no longer feel anything. Otherwise, the scene of blood spurting from his nose would have happened again. Stroking Ji-dong's head, Flaming Bar sighed softly and said, Ji-dong, oh Ji-dong, why are you so different from the humans I've met in the human world? You forced me to think of a way to repay you for the 4 years of alcohol, not daring to owe you anything. Only then can I maintain the purity of my soul. This time, you're the one who owes me. I hope you can grasp this opportunity. As she spoke, Flaming Bar's beautiful eyes flickered. She placed Ji-dong flat on the platform formed by the magma pillar. The golden and black halos in the air engulfed Ji-dong's body like rivers flowing into the sea. They slowly melted into his body, nourishing his body that was spasming after the intense pain. When Ji-dong woke up from his coma, his body no longer felt any pain. Instead, it was filled with dense magic. He subconsciously raised his hands to look and was surprised to find that there was an extra item in each of his palms. Chapter 23. When Ji-dong woke up from his coma, the first thing he did was to look at his palms because of the intense pain he felt before he fainted. He discovered that there was an extra thing in each of his hands, or rather, a brand on each of them. In the palm of his right hand, there was a golden sun. That's right, it was a sun. The circular golden disc was surrounded by golden patterns that emitted light. When Jidong looked at it, the sun in the palm of his hand immediately lit up. The golden light was dazzling, as if he was really holding the sun in his palm. In his left hand, there was also a brand, but it was a black moon. There was also a ring of brand around this black moon. However, when Jidong saw it, he did not feel a radiance, but a darkness that seemed to want to devour everything. It was deep and full of pressure. Jidong looked at the two brands in his hands in shock. They were not pictures that he had drawn, but had completely fused with his skin. Moreover, he felt that these two pictures seemed to have fused with his consciousness. There were many more things in his mind, and he seemed to have an additional domineering aura. Looking at his surroundings again, Jidong realized that the magma lake in the Earth's core, which he had always been a little afraid of, now looked no different from ordinary lake water. The fire elemental aura in the air also seemed to be fawning over him. He felt as if he was in control of everything here. Do you like it? This is my gift to you. A faint red light lit up in front of Jidong. The flaming bar seemed to have walked out of thin air and appeared in front of him. Jidong stood up from the platform of the magma fire pillar and asked in surprise, "Flaming bar, what is this?" The flaming bar smiled and said, "This is your future." "My future?" Jidong was even more confused. He stood up, and his consciousness was completely awake. He could clearly feel that there was something extra in his body. The flaming bar said, "Let me tell you a story and you'll understand. Actually, I wasn't the ruler of this place. The ruler was someone else. Moreover, the 18th floor of the Earth's core wasn't controlled by one being from the Earth's core, but two. They were a pair of twins. One was the flame monarch form from the Bing Wu primordial yang, sacred fire spirit, and the other was the dark flame devil king form from the Ding Si dark Yin fire spirit. These two sovereigns ruled the entire Earth's core, and also ruled the 18th floor of the Earth's core. Although they were twins, born at the same time, cultivated at the same time, and both possessed incomparably powerful strength, due to their opposing attributes, they didn't give way to each other. They fought nonstop in the 18th floor of the Earth's core every day. The combat skills they possessed were all-powerful skills that could destroy the heavens and the earth. All the creatures from the Earth's core also stood on their respective sides, according to their different attributes. Under their rule, the war in the Earth's core never stopped. Every war resulted in a large number of casualties, which greatly damaged the vitality of the Earth's core. Until one day, the Red Lotus emerged from the Earth's core and condensed into a Red Lotus flaming bar. She defeated the Flame Monarch and the Dark Flame Devil King one after another, completely eradicating them from the Earth's core. Only then did the 18th floor of the Earth's core return to peace. There were no more wars and peace. Every underground creature could live a relatively happy life and didn't need to worry about the next war that might happen at any time. You're that Red Lotus Flaming Bar. Listening to Flaming Bar's silent narration with a smile on her face, Jidong was shaken to the core. Defeating the two great demon kings that ruled the underground world sounded so natural from Flaming Bar's mouth, but one could imagine the hardships involved. This was also the first time Jidong knew, for sure, how powerful Flaming Bar was. She was the ruler of the underground world. When would he be able to catch up to her? The feeling of inferiority was unavoidable, causing Jidong's heart to turn gloomy. Flaming Bar nodded gently, as if recalling what had happened back then. Perhaps the battle between the two sovereigns affected the balance of the entire underground world, so I was born in the Earth's core. They were really powerful. In fact, the two fire seeds in your body were not created by me, but came from the two sovereigns. Those are their natal flames. These twin stars had reached the pinnacle of their respective flames. If I had to deal with them at the same time, I would have died for sure. It was their hatred that killed themselves, so I defeated them one by one. I used my natal Red Lotus fire to refine their souls, but my flame was also assimilated by them, thus changing the origin of my fire. The patterns on your palms are the demon spirits left behind after I refine them, or should I say, their most basic origin. They have no thoughts, but they remember all the power they once possessed. To be precise, the demon spirits are not energy, but memories. The memories of the two sovereigns. This is my gift to you. These two demon spirits have recorded all the skills of the two sovereigns. Using your yin and yang magician's words, that is, the benchmark technique, the fatal technique, the ultimate technique, and even the ultimate technique. Jidong had learned in the Fire Academy that once a yin and yang magician had his or her own yin and yang crown, he or she would have the foundation to practice magic skills. For any yin and yang magician, the importance of magic skills was second only to the yin and yang magic power. No matter how strong your magic power was, if you didn't have a powerful magic skill, you wouldn't be able to become a powerful magician. The classification of magic skills was different for what the Flaming Bar had said. The teacher in the Fire Academy had only mentioned 3 types of magic skills: the benchmark skill, the hit skill, and the ultimate skill. The benchmark skill was the most basic magic skill. Every yin and yang magician could learn some benchmark skills as long as he or she was admitted to a higher education institution. Then, he or she could choose the one that was suitable for them to practice. However, the hit skill was not that easy to learn. Even the higher education institutions might not teach it. Even if it was taught, it might not be suitable for them. Even yin and yang magicians of the same element would have different understandings of the same hit skill. Only by finding the skill that was most suitable for them could they unleash their full potential. There was another name for the hit skill, which was called the kill skill. It was already an extremely powerful skill. Whether it was the benchmark skill or the hit skill, they were divided into 3 levels: high, medium, and low. A scholar yin and yang magician with 1 crown could only learn the benchmark skill. Only a master yin and yang magician with 2 crowns would have the opportunity to learn the hit skill. Generally speaking, the high-level magic skills were treasured by some big families. It was extremely difficult to learn them. If an yin and yang magician wanted to become strong, learning the magic skills required a lot of luck. That was why there were merchants who specialized in selling magic skills. The price of the magic skills was even higher. This was also why Yang Bingtian had said that he would not accept any random disciple. If an yin and yang magician could learn the magic skills from a strong teacher, the benefits would be undeniable. As for the more advanced sure kill skills, the teacher of Distant Fire Academy only had a simple comment: they could only be encountered and not sought. They were incomparably powerful existences. Any yin-yang demon master with a sure kill skill would be the focus of the continent. This was all Jidong knew about the magic skills. But after hearing Flaming Bar's words, he realized that the knowledge taught by the Fire Academy was far from enough. The magic skills not only included the benchmark skill, the hit skill, and the ultimate skill, but also the higher-level ultimate skill and the ultimate skill. Even the Flaming Bar would say the word even, which showed how terrifying the power of the ultimate skill was. Flaming Bar, are you saying that I already have the memory of the Flame Monarch and the Dark Flame Devil skills? Jidong's heart twitched slightly. Of course, he knew what a great gift this was. Flaming Bar nodded and said, in terms of strength, the 2 lords are definitely the strongest in the fire element. If they weren't so belligerent, they wouldn't have ended up like this. If you can completely master their skills in the future, then you can do whatever you want in the human world. Don't bury the abilities of the 2 lords. Let them flourish in the human world. Jidong looked at his hands. To the Flaming Bar's surprise, he didn't reveal too much excitement and joy. He only smiled bitterly and said, Flaming Bar, you've given me such a great gift. How do you expect me to repay you in the future? If I knew that the things you wanted to give me were so precious, I definitely wouldn't have accepted it. To a yin and yang magician, not having to search for magic skills in the future was definitely a great advantage. Moreover, these magic skills were passed down from the 2 lords of the underworld. The Flaming Bar smiled and said, the lifespan of humans can live up to 80 to 100 years old. The powerful yin and yang magician can even live up to 200 years old. Of course, I'm not giving these 2 demon souls to you for free. Making 99 years of fine wine for me is the price you have to pay. Are you willing to do that? Lifting his head to look at the Flaming Bar, Jidong said impulsively, even if you don't give me anything, as long as I'm still alive, I'm willing to be your exclusive bartender forever. Actually, he didn't say anything. He could only say it in his heart. Flaming Bar, do you know? If I can see you every day, I'll be satisfied. Hearing Ji Dong's sincere words, the flaming bar was stunned for a moment. An unnoticeable ripple flashed across his eyes. He chuckled and said, Ji Dong, I don't need you to be my exclusive bartender. You have such great bartending skills. Wouldn't it be a pity if I'm the only one who gets to taste them? Remember, you have to be my bartender for a total of 99 years. For years have just passed, so there's still 95 years left. Ji Dong nodded seriously and said, All right, then there's still 95 years left. The flaming bar changed the topic and looked at Ji Dong's hands. He said, The skills of the two kings aren't that easy to use. You have to wait until your mana has reached a certain level and is able to bear the burden of the skill. Only then will you be able to activate that memory and obtain the right to use the skill. You can only use one of each of them now. Use your mind to feel the blazing sun and the dark moon in the palm of your hand, and you'll obtain the memory. However, you must not underestimate these two skills. They're the foundation of all the skills of the two kings. If used well, they're even more powerful than the hit skill. Only by practicing them well, and with the enhancement of your own yin and yang mana, will you have the possibility of obtaining further skills. All right, go back. Looking at the time, you've been here for 3 days. The Academy has already thought that you've gone missing. Today should be the time for your 4th year's final exam. 3 years ago, you were stripped of your official student status. Now, it's time for you to surprise them. I've been here for 3 days. Ji Dong was shocked. Only then did he realize that he had unknowingly spent so much time condensing the yin-yang crown. Saying goodbye to the flaming bar, wrapped in the red lotus, he hurried back to the academy. The red light flickered, and as the red lotus petals receded, Ji Dong had returned to his room. It was already bright outside. Looking at the sky, it was almost noon. He didn't dare to stay. He changed into a clean 3rd Fire Department uniform and hurried downstairs. When Ji Dong arrived at the playground, he happened to see 3 students standing neatly on the playground. He immediately knew that, as the flaming bar said, today was the time for the final exam. The 3 teams on the playground were arranged according to grade. Standing in the front was his 4th year, followed by the higher 5th year and the graduating 6th year. The first 3 years had obviously been assessed one by one. According to the rules of the Fire Academy, during the final exam, starting from the lower grades, the other grades had to wait on the playground. Before the exam, they were not even allowed to eat lunch. This was also a kind of tempering for the students. There was no doubt that the 6th years had been tempering the longest. Ji Dong quickly ran to the 4th year team and saw Carr and Bissot standing at the front of the 3rd Fire Department and Fuhua series respectively. Both of them seemed to have changed a little. The 14-year-old Carr was already more than 8 meters tall. Although he was not as sturdy as teacher Xiatian, he was quite fierce. His shoulders were broad, and the muscles under his uniform bulged. With short red hair like steel needles, Ji Dong could vaguely see that Carr seemed to have a layer of faint red light flashing on his body. Bissot was no longer as effeminate as he was when he was a child. His skin was fair, and he was more handsome. Although he looked a little weak, his eyes, which were shining like cold stars, showed his strength that could not be easily humiliated. Ji Dong was delighted and immediately understood that they had also broken through. Chapter 24. Boss, where have you been? I couldn't find you for a few days. I thought you were missing. Seeing Ji Dong, Bissot, and Carr immediately greeted him and were very excited. Ji Dong smiled and said, Let's not talk about this first. Have you two broken through? When is it our turn to be assessed? Carr said a little sadly, It's going to be our grade soon. We have broken through, but I'm afraid we have to leave the college after the end of this year. Boss, Ji Dong patted Carr's shoulder and said, Breaking through is a good thing. Anyway, I have been here for 4 years. Where do you want to go to school? I will accompany you. Do you think that with my bartending ability, I can't make a living in any city? The requirements of the advanced college should not be so strict. They will not stop you from leaving the college. Carr and Bissot were overjoyed at the same time. Bissot smiled and said, Great, boss. We were worried that we wouldn't be able to drink your bartending in the future. As for making a living, don't mention it. Leave it to me. For 4 years, Jidong had always known that Carr and Bisso had always been protecting him. Whether it was the third fire series or the Fuhua series, if anyone said a bad word about him, they would secretly retaliate. With his excellent talent and identity as the top student of the year, there was no voice among the students that said he was a waste. He had always kept this brotherly love in his heart, just as he was about to tell these two good brothers that he had also broken through. Teacher Xia Tian's voice came from the direction of the teaching building. The fourth years will carry out the assessment. There was no time to explain. They had to proceed with the test first. The group of Year 4 students lined up in a neat formation and walked towards the school building. Jidong, Baisu, and Carl naturally walked to the front. Xia Tian saw him at a glance, frowned, and asked, "Jidong, where have you been these days? Even if you're an auditing student, you must abide by the rules of the college. When the assessment is over, come to me to accept punishment." Yes, Jidong respectfully agreed. Although teacher Xia had a bad temper, over the past few years, every student knew that he was actually very protective of his students. He was extremely good to his students and was loved and respected by the fourth-year students. Following Xia Tian into the auditorium, Jidong's mood couldn't help but be a little excited. 4 years had passed, and today was the time to draw a full stop here. Yang Bingtian also saw Jidong walk in with the students and couldn't help but give him a dissatisfied look. Not being able to find Jidong these past few days had really made this dean worry a lot. After a few routine words, the assessment began according to the usual order. The first to go on stage was naturally the 3rd Fire Department's 4th year's top student, Carr. Looking at his proud disciple, Xia Tian couldn't even keep the color on his face. He nodded to Carr with a smile and said, "Let's begin." Carr didn't stretch out his hands to release flames like he did in the previous assessment. A red light suddenly burst out from his body, and the dazzling light instantly distorted the air around his body. The red light could clearly be seen condensing above his head, turning into a white sun crown with a red flame mark on it. The half-star on the crown ring fully indicated his level at this time. 1 crown level 1 3rd Fire Scholar, or rather level 11 3rd Fire Scholar. Exclamations sounded among the students. Even though they all knew of Carr's strength, seeing him complete the condensation of the yin-yang crown with their own eyes still caused a wave of exclamations. It had to be known that the leap from level 10 apprentice to level 11 scholar was extremely important in yin and yang magician. Whether one had a yin-yang crown or not was the most basic proof of a yin and yang magician. The teachers on the rostrum were not surprised. Obviously, most of them already knew about Carr's breakthrough. Teacher Xia Tian's voice became particularly loud and clear. Carr, level 11 3rd Fire Scholar, successfully condensed the yin-yang crown. Excellent results. There was no doubt that when Carr walked down from the stage, he had already become the focus of the audience. The following assessment on the side of the 3rd Fire Department became ordinary. The strongest was only a level 7 apprentice. It wasn't until Bisso represented the Fuhua series as the first to go on stage that the atmosphere in the auditorium once again rose to a climax. Exactly the same level as Carr, level 11 4th Fire Scholar, 1 crown and half-star, yin-yang crown. Bisso walked down from the rostrum with some pride. His and Carr's efforts over the past 4 years had finally paid off. Condensing the yin-yang crown meant that they already had the qualifications to graduate. With their age, they would definitely be included in the ranks of the Academy's top schools. The Fuhua series assessment also ended quickly. Dean Yang Bingtian sat on the rostrum and said with a smile, "Today's assessment of the 4th years has brought me a great surprise. Carr from the 3rd Fire Department and Bisso from the Fuhua series have both condensed their own yin-yang crowns. Their results are obvious to all, and they will also be directly recommended by the Academy to continue their studies at the top schools. The other students should set their goals as well. Work hard and strive to reach the scholar level as soon as possible and truly become a yin and yang magician." All right, the 4th year's assessment ends here. Just as Yang Bingtian was about to announce the end of the assessment, a voice suddenly rang out, "Wait a minute." In the Fire Academy, rashly interrupting the dean's speech was punishable by disrespect to the teachers. The teachers couldn't help but frown, but the students' gazes turned towards the direction of the voice. Jidong calmly stood up from the back of the students. His eyes met Mr. Xia Tian's somewhat strict gaze. I also want to take the assessment. You, Xia Tian frowned and said, Jidong, as an auditing student, you don't need to take the assessment. Jidong's eyes showed a bit of pride. He strode to the rostrum and said to the teachers, I remember 3 years ago, when I couldn't pass the assessment of the first years and became an auditing student, the teachers once said that if I could make a breakthrough before the end of the 6th year, then I might officially graduate from the Fire Academy. Xia Tian was stunned. You think you're qualified to take the assessment now? Before Jidong could speak, the Fuhua series teacher, Lu Jun, who obviously didn't get along with Xia Tian, snorted and said, You're a natural waste of our time. Even if you could become a 2nd or 3rd level apprentice, what's the use? You still can't become a real yin and yang magician. Mr. Xia Tian, how can you discipline your own student? How dare you let him interrupt the dean's speech? As early as 3 years ago, Jidong was already very unhappy with this guy. But at that time, he was indeed demoted to a 1st level apprentice because of his ultimate dual fire, so he had nothing to say. But now, he was no longer the same Jidong from 3 years ago. Before Xia Tian could say anything, he had already said in a low voice, That's right, I'm an auditing student, but before I left the academy, I was a member of the academy. As a teacher, you insulted me as a waste. Is that what a teacher should do? Being contradicted by Jidong, Lu Jun was instantly enraged. He slammed the table and stood up. You're just an auditing student. How dare you talk to me like that? Jidong snorted and said, My class teacher is Mr. Xia Tian, not you. What right do you have to reprimand me? Do you deserve to be a teacher? I don't know what level your magic had reached when you were 14. Now, I'll use the fact to tell you who's the waste. The students below the stage were already dumbfounded. To contradict a teacher in front of so many students and teachers, although Jidong's actions made many people feel very happy, his words were really shocking. Even the powerful siblings Zhu Tian and Zhu Gui had never been so arrogant. However, just as everyone was shocked, a dazzling light suddenly exploded from Jidong's body. The piercing red light was like a flaming bar soaring into the sky, instantly enveloping Jidong's body. Under the faint golden light, it instantly condensed on top of Jidong's head. When the white sun crown with a complete crown star appeared on top of Jidong's head, the entire audience was silent. The red light on the crown star and the dancing flame brand on the central crown peak were all like a ruthless slap to Lu Jun's face. This is impossible. Lu Jun's first reaction was to exclaim. Jidong smiled coldly. At this moment, his gaze suddenly became incomparably arrogant, as if the god of wine from his previous life had returned. His body didn't move, but the red light instantly changed. The explosive 3rd fire instantly transformed into the soft and tough 4th fire, and the white sun crown on top of his head also transformed into a black yin crown. The blue flame danced on the yin crown peak, and the fierce and violent temperament instantly changed. Lu Jun only felt that Jidong's gaze was like an ice-cold viper staring at him. When the 3rd fire yang crown was released from the top of Jidong's head, the entire audience was silent. When it transformed into the 4th fire yin crown, the entire audience was in an uproar. All the teachers sitting behind the rostrum, including Dean Yang Bingtian, suddenly stood up, their eyes filled with disbelief as they looked at Jidong. The yin-yang crown was condensed into a yin-yang crown with the balance of yin and yang. Even Yang Bingtian, who had reached the realm of 5 crowns, had never seen it before. He also never thought that Jidong would actually be able to learn it. Jidong didn't seem to see the surprised expressions of the teachers in front of him. He slowly put his hands together in front of his chest, and suddenly the magic around his body changed again. The right side was red, and the left side was blue. The 2 colors of light, with his body as the center, blossomed from both sides of his body. The yin-yang crown on top of his head also became black on the right and white on the left. The red and blue colors of the crown star and the flame on the crown peak shone together. He opened his hands that were clasped together in front of his chest, and two different colored flames suddenly blossomed from his palms. The feeling of the red and blue flames blossoming in his hands at the same time could only be described as breathtaking. Coupled with the black and white yin-yang crown, at this moment, Jidong's arrogance no longer seemed so dazzling. He had the right to be arrogant for being able to cultivate to such a level with his yin and yang balanced physique. Coldly glancing at Lu Jun, Jidong didn't continue to provoke him. It gave Lu Jun the feeling that Jidong didn't care to attack him. Lu Jun's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. He no longer had the face to stay here. He stared at Jidong with hatred, then quickly left the rostrum. The flames disappeared, and the arrogance in Jidong's eyes disappeared. He turned to Mr. Xia Tian and said respectfully, "Mr. Xia, Jidong didn't embarrass you. Now, can I become a member of the Fire Academy again?" Looking at Jidong, an indescribable emotion flashed in Xia Tian's eyes. Jidong didn't embarrass him, which filled his heart with shame. In the eyes of other teachers, Jidong, who was so respectful to Xia Tian, had achieved today's results because of Xia Tian's teaching. But in fact, Xia Tian had already given up on this bystander with the yin-yang body balance. Today's results are the result of your hard work. Fourth-year auditing student, Jidong, final exam result. Bachelor of the Fire Element, C and D, grade 12. Excellent results. President Yang, please allow him to become a formal student of the Academy again. Yang Bingtian slightly recovered at this time, nodded and said, "Yin and Yang dual attribute Yin and Yang crown. This is the first time I have seen such a result with the Yin and Yang balanced physique. It can be seen how much effort student Jidong has put in the past 4 years of cultivation. I will allow him to become an official student of Distant Fire Academy again. Since he has reached the graduation result, he will also become one of the Academy's guaranteed graduates." Well, the fourth-year assessment is over. As soon as Yang Bingtian announced the end of the exam, Bissot and Carr couldn't hold back their excitement. They rushed up and hugged Jidong. "Boss, you hit it from us so hard. You're the best among us three. You didn't even tell us that you've reached level 12. Jidong smiled bitterly. "It's not that I didn't want to tell you. You guys were afraid of hurting me, so you deliberately avoided the topic of cultivation when we met. I didn't have the chance to tell you. It's my fault. It's my fault. I accept the punishment." Carr and Bissot looked at each other and smiled wickedly. "Boss, then you'll be our full-time bartender this afternoon." At noon, the three brothers, who had also completed the graduation exam, celebrated in Jidong's room. Cocktails were poured into their stomachs. Even Jidong, who always valued wine, was infected by the excited atmosphere. After 4 years of hard work, they finally saw the light of day. The 4 years of loneliness and depression seemed to explode at this moment. The three of them got drunk and fell asleep in Jidong's room without caring about their image. In the evening, Jidong was the first to wake up from his drunken dream. Maybe it was because of the biological clock he had cultivated for 4 years. He woke up in the evening when Yin and Yang converged. Jidong carried his two brothers, who had fallen asleep on the floor, to the bed and sat down on the floor. Although he already had the yin-yang crown, he wouldn't waste his time on cultivation. This was also the first time he had cultivated after reaching level 10 and becoming a double major scholar. Chapter 25. Jidong closed his eyes. When he focused his mind on the origin yin-yang crown and the golden and black vortex in his chest, he immediately felt that it was different from before. There was no need for him to guide it at all. The origin yin-yang crown immediately emitted a unique aura, and its own magic was quietly released, forming a special magnetic field around his body. The third fire and fourth fire elements in the air immediately condensed into his body at a faster speed. As soon as these fire elements entered Jidong's body, they were immediately attracted by the vortex in his chest. They were like moths flying into a flame, and were assimilated by the yin-yang vortex, becoming a part of his own cultivation. Compared to before, not only was the speed of absorbing fire elements much faster, but the speed of digestion had also increased exponentially. In just a short hour of cultivation, Jidong felt that the effect was better than the previous few days of cultivation. Of course, this was not taking into account the situation at the Earth's core lake. Just as Ji Dong was about to continue cultivating, someone knocked on his door. Ji Dong suddenly realized that he hadn't made a cocktail for President Yang today. Moreover, President Yang already knew of his current strength, so he would probably ask him. He opened the door, and sure enough, it was President Yang Bingtian outside. Looking at Ji Dong, Yang Bingtian's eyes flashed with an indescribable complex light. He waved at him and said, Ji Dong, come to my office for a while. You don't have to make a cocktail today. I have something to say to you. Oh, okay. Ji Dong closed the door and followed Yang Bingtian to his office. Yang Bingtian pointed to the sofa and gestured for Ji Dong to sit down. He pulled a chair from the side and sat opposite Ji Dong. He stared at the 14-year-old boy in front of him with a burning gaze. Ji Dong felt a little unnatural under Yang Bingtian's gaze. He said, President Yang, why are you looking for me? Yang Bingtian sighed softly and said, Ji Dong, I called you here to apologize to you. Why? You have always taken care of me. Ji Dong looked at him in confusion. Yang Bingtian shook his head and said, all along, I have paid too little attention to you. Ever since you didn't pass the assessment in the first year, I have long given up on your cultivation because of your yin and yang balance attribute. I have underestimated your determination. I really didn't expect that you would give me such a big surprise today. In the Yin and Yang Magician Guild, you are also the first fire magician with yin and yang balanced attributes. You have already passed the most difficult stage. It is my fault that I couldn't help you with your cultivation. For the past 4 years, you have been mixing drinks for me so that I can taste the best cocktails. However, I didn't do what I promised you. You have been missing these past few days because you went to condense the yin-yang crown by yourself. This is all my negligence. Ji Dong suddenly realized that it was because of this that Yang Bingtian looked for him. In fact, he was filled with gratitude towards Yang Bingtian. If it wasn't for Yang Bingtian who brought him back, it would have been difficult for him to even eat, let alone become a yin and yang magician. It would also be impossible for him to coincidentally open the omnidirectional indefinite teleportation scroll and see the flaming bar. For the past 4 years, Ji Dong had been seriously mixing drinks for Yang Bingtian. This in itself was Ji Dong's repayment to him. President Yang, if it wasn't for you bringing me back and taking care of me all these years, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. You have done a lot for me. I can't thank you enough. Yang Bingtian smiled and said, I am relieved to hear that. You are a sensible and good child. Although I don't know how you did it, but to be able to become an yin and yang magician with an yin and yang balanced body, I can see how hard you have been working for the past 4 years. Let's not talk about the past. What are your plans for the future? Ji Dong said, I have broken through the 10th level and reached the bachelor level. If possible, I hope you can also give me a chance to officially graduate from the Fire Academy and go to a higher school with Karan Bissau. Since I have chosen the profession of yin and yang magician, I will continue on this path. Yang Bingtian nodded and said, I have been thinking about this afternoon. With your current strength, graduating smoothly is naturally not a problem. I have already asked Xia Tian to handle the graduation procedures for the 3 of you. Now, I have 2 choices for you. One is to directly get promoted to one of the 3 advanced fire magician academies in the Southern Fire Empire. You can choose from any of the 3 academies. An outstanding student like you will definitely be fighting for them. The other option is to have both opportunities and risks. But if you can stand firm there, your future will be limitless. Hearing the first option from Yang Bingtian, Ji Dong was already very satisfied. However, the latter's words couldn't help but arouse Ji Dong's interest. President Yang, what is the second option? Is there a risk in going to an academy? Yang Bingtian nodded and said, that is the academy with the highest elimination rate in the entire continent. It is also the top elite academy in the entire continent. It doesn't belong to any country. It was founded by the continent's 5 great empires. Those who can further their studies, they're all the best of the best. But if you can't meet the requirements of the assessment, you will immediately be eliminated. There is no room for negotiation. Moreover, even if you're recommended by our Fire Academy, you will still have to take their entrance exam. Only by passing the exam can you officially become a member. Ji Dong asked thoughtfully, is the quality of education there very high? Yang Bingtian nodded and said, it is worthy of being the best in the entire continent. In our yin and yang magician world, it has a very important position. The top academies in the continent only teach some basic skills. Even the best students can only learn 1 or 2 skills. However, in this special academy, as long as you have enough strength, you can choose basic skills and skills at will. If you can pass the final assessment, you will even be rewarded with a killer skill. Students who can successfully graduate from this academy will be highly recognized in any country. Choosing that academy is undoubtedly a huge challenge. You will have to face the most outstanding students of the younger generation. You will have to bear enormous pressure and the possibility of being eliminated at any time. To be honest, if you consider the stability of your development, I don't really want you to choose this academy. But if you want to become an influential figure in the yin and yang magician world, this is the best stage. Ji Dong silently nodded, and a light flashed in his eyes. He said, pressure is motivation. President Yang, I will choose the second path. What is the name of this academy? Yang Bingtian smiled and said, I guess that you would choose this. The pride in your bones will not easily yield to anything. This academy is named after the 10 departments of yin and yang magician. It is called the Heavenly STEM Academy. I have already told you all that I can tell you. The Heavenly STEM Academy has many secrets that belong to itself. As for whether or not you can know them, it will depend on how far you can go in the Heavenly STEM Academy. Ji Dong thought to himself, it would be strange if an academy that was jointly established by the 5 great empires of the continent didn't have secrets. Just the reason for its establishment was enough to make one think deeply. And President Yang obviously knew about it. It was just that he was afraid of something that he couldn't tell him. Yang Bingtian continued, the Heavenly STEM Academy's admission method is very special. It doesn't recruit students from the outside. Every year, the Heavenly STEM Academy will give 30 spots to each of the 5 empires, and the academies of the empires will divide the spots and recommend them. This recommendation spot is like an admission ticket. Only with it will you be qualified to take the entrance exam. Speaking of which, your luck is quite good. The recommendation spots for the Heavenly STEM Academy will change every year. In the past few years, our academies Zhu Tian and Zhu Gui have both been admitted to the Heavenly STEM Academy. This year, we have a total of 3 recommendation spots, accounting for 1/10 of our Southern Fire Empire. It just so happens that the 3 of you have successfully condensed the yin-yang crown. Bisso and Kar have already made the same choice as you. As for whether or not you can continue cultivating together in the future, it will depend on your own abilities. Ji Dong said, we won't disappoint President Yang's expectations. Yang Bingtian said, tomorrow is the holiday. Kar and Bisso will go home to reunite with their families. If you still want to stay here, you must cultivate hard during this period of time. Try to improve before the Heavenly STEM Academy's entrance exam 3 months later. Actually, I'm not worried about whether or not you can get into the Heavenly STEM Academy. Your yin and yang attribute is enough to knock on the door of the Heavenly STEM Academy. I also need to go out tomorrow. Before I leave, I will give you 3 recommendation letters. When the time comes, you, Kar, and Bisso can go together. We've been together for 4 years and enjoyed your bartending service for 4 years. This bracelet is for you as a souvenir. As he spoke, Yang Bingtian took off the bracelet on his wrist that seemed to be carved out of rubies and stuffed it into Ji Dong's hand. Ji Dong had seen Yang Bingtian make things out of thin air through this bracelet more than once. He naturally understood its preciousness and said, President Yang, you have given me too much. I can't take anything from you anymore. Yang Bingtian's face sank, and he insisted on stuffing the bracelet into Ji Dong's hand. He said, don't refuse. Just take it as your salary for the past 4 years. This bracelet has a storage function and can store 10 cubic meters of items. With it, it will be much more convenient for you on the road. Don't forget, you're the best bartender I have ever seen. A bartender without bartending utensils and wine. What do you look like? I also gave you all the wine in your room. Take it with you. I also left 500 gold coins in the bracelet for your travel expenses. It's very simple to use. You just need to inject the third fire magic into it, and you can naturally open the separate space for storage and storage of items. Ji Dong still wanted to refuse, but he was stopped by Yang Bingtian and said, "Don't refuse anymore. As long as you don't forget the Fire Academy, when you become successful in the future, it's enough. I still have a lot of similar storage tools. This thing is not too precious." Well, as we are about to say goodbye, aren't you going to make me another cocktail? Putting the red bracelet on his wrist, the bracelet automatically stuck to Ji Dong's skin, sending a faint warmth. Ji Dong didn't say anything more, but Yang Bingtian's kindness was deeply engraved in his heart. Watching Ji Dong leave his office, Yang Bingtian's face showed a trace of a smile. He said to himself, "Silly boy, you have been fooled. I have been drinking the wine you made for 4 years. How can I be willing to leave you, the unparalleled bartender? Soon, we will meet again." Bisso and Carr weren't surprised at all that Ji Dong had chosen the Heavenly STEM Academy. At the end of the second school year, Dean Yang Bingtian had indeed left the academy. Ji Dong and the other two had also received a recommendation letter and a map to the Heavenly STEM Academy from teacher Xiatian. The huge fire academy was as quiet as it had been in previous years. 2 months had passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Dong's life had become richer and more substantial than before. In these 2 months, in addition to working hard to improve his magic power, he had also added a new practice, and that was magic skills. The Flame Monarch and the Dark Flame Devil were the 2 most basic skills in his memory, and Ji Dong's practice method had also changed along with these 2 basic skills. Every day, he would focus on cultivating his magical power for 8 hours at the geocentric lake. But when he was at the distant Fire Academy, he would put all his effort into cultivating these 2 skills. The reason was very simple. While cultivating these 2 skills, he would also improve his magical power. In the human world, the speed at which one's magical power increased when cultivating magic skills was no less than when he specialized in cultivating magic power. Since he could temper his skills and also improve his magical power, why not? After taking a shower, Ji Dong walked out of his room. Living the same life almost every day for 2 months had made him somewhat bored. At least he could see Bisso, Carr, and the others during the school year, but he had been alone for the past 2 months. Although his cultivation base improved faster under such circumstances, the Flaming Bar once said that excessive rigidity was easy to break, so he needed to balance hardness with softness. Coincidentally, one of the cocktails that he was going to make for the Flaming Bar today had been used up, so he needed to go out to buy more. It was a good opportunity for him to go out for a walk to ease his tense mood. After bidding farewell to the teachers who stayed behind in the academy, Ji Dong walked out of the Fire Academy. He had been here for 4 years, and the number of times he had actually stepped out of the academy could be counted with 2 hands. As soon as Ji Dong stepped out of the academy, a beggar who was sitting in a corner in front of the Fire Academy quietly stood up and ran in another direction. Chapter 26. Strolling leisurely on the streets of Fire City, the feeling of relaxation caused Ji Dong's entire body to feel much more relaxed. After an entire day of cultivation, his tensed muscles also relaxed a little. As he stared at the shops on both sides of the street, he felt a sense of comfort in his body and mind. As he walked, Ji Dong silently thought, "It seems like the words of the Flaming Bar are right. Blindly cultivating isn't necessarily good. Occasionally going out for a walk isn't a bad thing." However, before leaving the Fire Academy, this would most likely be the last time. In another 10 days, Carr and Bisso would come looking for him. The Heavenly STEM Academy was located in the Middle Earth Empire. Although the Middle Earth Empire shared a border with the Southern Fire Empire, it was still quite a distance. Only by leaving 20 days in advance would he have more time. Since he came out today, he might as well buy all the alcohol he had in stock. Before leaving for the Heavenly STEM Academy, he could make a few more cocktails for the Flaming Bar. If he were to travel with Carr and the others, he might not be able to see her every day. Although he didn't come out many times, Ji Dong could still be considered very familiar with the situation in Fire City. This was especially so for the places that sold wine. Very swiftly, he bought the wine he needed. With the interspatial bracelet Yang Bingtian gave him, it was truly convenient. This bracelet could only be used by fire-type magi. Even if he bought many things at once, he could easily store them inside. After buying the alcohol, just as Ji Dong walked out of the shop, a figure suddenly rushed over to greet him. "Are you called Ji Dong?" The person blocked Ji Dong's path and asked without rhyme or reason. When Ji Dong took a closer look, he saw that it was a young beggar. One must know that in Fire City, beggars were rare. For years ago, Ji Dong was also one of these few. Seeing that the other party could call out his name, he couldn't help but feel a little strange. "I am, do you know me?" The young beggar handed a piece of paper to Ji Dong. "Someone told me to give this to you." After saying that, without waiting for Ji Dong to ask, he turned around and ran away, disappearing into the crowd in a moment. Ji Dong frowned. He walked to a secluded corner and stored all the alcohol he had just bought into his storage bracelet. Only then did he open the note and read it. 5 miles south of the city, bus, quickly come, car and I are in danger. It was signed by Bisso. Bisso and car are in danger. Ji Dong's heart clenched, but his heart was soon filled with doubts. Even if they were in danger, they should have sent a letter to the academy. Why would they send it to him here? It just so happened that he was away from the academy. However, although he was puzzled, Ji Dong still decided to go and take a look. The number of people he knew in Fire City was very limited. Those who knew of his relationship with Bisso and Car were only his classmates. Even if this was a prank, he had to go. If not, if Bisso and Car really met with danger, it would be too late for regrets. Not daring to waste any time, Ji Dong hurriedly ran in the direction of the southern part of the city. Ji Dong was actually more familiar with the outskirts of the city than Fire City. After all, Teacher Xiatian was most used to punishing students to run around the city. Ji Dong vaguely remembered that 5 miles south of the city, there seemed to be a small forest with a hillside. It was a very secluded place. After leaving the city, Ji Dong ran in the direction of the forest while paying attention to his surroundings. Although he couldn't think of anyone who would find someone to trick him, that strange note still made him vigilant. However, his observation didn't have any effect. There weren't many people on the road, and there were no suspicious signs. The current Ji Dong was no longer the weak little beggar he was when he first arrived at the Fire Academy. The distance of 5 miles was covered in the blink of an eye. In the distance, the forest on the hillside could already be seen. When he stopped outside the forest, Ji Dong shouted, "Bisso, Car, are you guys in there?" The forest was silent. There was no response. Ji Dong looked around and carefully focused his attention on his hearing. After breaking through the 10th level, his 6 senses had improved again, so his hearing was naturally very sensitive. However, when he listened carefully, he couldn't hear anything other than the rustling of the leaves in the wind. "Whatever, I'll go in and take a look first." Ji Dong stepped into the forest, looking around as he walked deeper into the forest. He was not only looking for Car and Bisso, but also hoping to find some clues. However, to his disappointment, he still couldn't find anything. There were no traces of a fight. Could it really be a prank? Halfway into the forest, Ji Dong stopped and looked around. He couldn't help but frown slightly. Who's playing this kind of prank on me? Mumbling to himself, Ji Dong decided not to look anymore. It was obvious that Bisso and Car weren't here. Ji Dong didn't ask about the 2 brothers' families in detail. He only heard from them that Car was a commoner and Bissu's family was a businessman. At this moment, a cold voice suddenly came. "Do you really think this is a joke?" Ji Dong suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the voice. He shouted, "Who's there? Come out." Behind a big tree that needed 2 people to wrap their arms around, a person slowly walked out. Seeing this person, Ji Dong couldn't help but be stunned. A trace of uneasiness flashed through his heart. "Teacher Lu Jun, why are you here?" Ji Dong asked doubtfully. The person who came out from behind the tree was none other than the teacher of the Fuhua series, Lu Jun, who had been humiliated by Ji Dong during the final exam and then left dejectedly in front of his strength. Lu Jun had a cold smile on his face. He said, "I've been waiting for you here." The uneasiness in Ji Dong's heart increased. He suddenly said, "That note was sent to me by someone?" Lu Jun smiled slightly. His somewhat pale face was calm and unruffled. He said, "That's right. I've been waiting for this day. You've made me wait for 2 whole months." You're indeed a hard-working student. The final exam has already ended, but you've still endured not leaving the academy for 2 whole months. No wonder you're the first Devil Master to successfully cultivate the yin and yang attributes. I have to say, you're a genius, Jidong said without batting an eyelid. Since teacher Lu Jun knows I'm at the academy, you can find me there if you need anything. Why did you lure me here? The smile on Lu Jun's face suddenly disappeared. He snorted coldly. Now you still don't know why I lured you here? As expected, you're the same as that idiot Xia Tian. Your brain doesn't know how to think. If I went to the academy to find you, wouldn't it be easy for me to leave a loophole? I'm a cautious person. No matter what I do, I won't leave any loose ends. So, I'd rather wait for 2 months than take the slightest risk. Oh, right. I heard that you once asked the Qiu Tian what the totem of our Fuhua series is when you first enter the academy. You've also studied in the academy for 4 years. You should know by now. The totem of the Fuhua series is the flying serpent. Jidong said calmly. The yin and yang magician has a total of 10 series. Each series has its own totem. The totem of the 3rd fire series is the vermilion bird, which is also known as the phoenix. As for the Fuhua series, it's the flying serpent that once appeared on the back of the Qiu Tian. Lu Jun nodded and said, That's right, it's the flying serpent. We Fuhua series magicians are not as impulsive as the 3rd fire series. We will only explode when we encounter trouble. We can endure like a snake and wait for the opportunity to strike. With the sharpest killers. When he heard up to here, Jidong understood that there was probably no room for negotiation today. He said, In that case, teacher Lu Jun has been waiting for me to leave the academy for the sake of luring me here to teach me a lesson. Looks like what I said before wasn't wrong at all. You really aren't worthy of being a teacher. Teach. You make it sound too simple. Lu Jun said coldly, That bastard Xia Tian stole my Qiu Tian. His disciple actually made me lose face during the final exam. I can't even lift my head up. You're right. You're a genius in cultivation. However, there's so many geniuses in the continent. How many of them can really grow? Today, I'll deal with you first. I'll strangle a genius like you in the cradle. Then I'll find a chance to destroy that bastard Xia Tian. Hearing this, Jidong finally understood everything. So this Lu Jun and Xia Tian were love rivals. Both were chasing after teacher Qiu Tian. It was obvious that teacher Qiu Tian was more inclined towards Xia Tian. Lu Jun's love turned into hatred. That's why he purposely went against Xia Tian. During the graduation ceremony, Jidong had accidentally helped Xia Tian and completely crushed Lu Jun's confidence. Lu Jun harbored hatred in his heart. That's why he was looking for an opportunity to take revenge. Moreover, from the looks of it, it wasn't as simple as just teaching Jidong a lesson. Thinking quickly, Jidong analyzed the situation in front of him. He sneered coldly. Lu Jun, you're venting your anger on me, a student, for the matter between you and teacher Xia Tian. Is this your courage? No wonder teacher Qiu Tian doesn't like you. How are you going to strangle me? Are you really going to kill me? He. Lu Jun suddenly laughed hysterically. Why does he get all the good things? With that stupid pig brain of his, why does he have to be a disciple of President Yang and break through to the Triple Crown realm? Why does he have to steal my Qiu Tian? That's right, I can't beat Xia Tian. But if I kill you today and find someone to send your corpse to him, what do you think his expression will be? As long as I do it secretly, no one will be able to guess it's me. At the same time, I'll be able to vent my anger for humiliating me during the final exam. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're already a madman, Jidong said coldly. At the same time, red and blue lights were released from his body. The 2 lights wrapped around his body and gradually formed a black and white yin-yang crown above his head. But different from the final exam 2 months ago, this time the stars on the crown were no longer a single star but 1.5 stars. Obviously, in these 2 months, Jidong's mana had increased by 1 level, becoming a scholar of the 13th level. Stopping laughing, Lu Jun disdainfully looked at the yin-yang crown above Jidong's head. Good, very good. You really are a genius. In a short 2 months, you've broken through again. Very good. Like this, I'll kill you even more. Do you think that just by relying on your first crown realm strength, you can contend against me? Even if I can't break through to the triple crown realm, killing you is as simple as crushing an ant." As he said this, a cold light flashed in Lu Jun's eyes. A surging blue light immediately rushed out from his body. The blue light condensed above his head and formed a black yin-yang crown. On his yin-yang crown, there were 2 peaks with a blue flame brand. On the crown ring, there were 4.5 stars. 2 crowns meant 20 levels. Adding on the 4.5 stars, he was impressively a 4th fire magician of the 29th level. In these 4 years, Xia Tian had long since broken through to the quadruple crown realm. And according to Jidong's memories, this teacher Lu Jun seemed to have long since had the strength to break through to the quadruple crown realm, but he had never been able to break through. The quadruple crown was the second big bottleneck of the yin and yang magician, blocking his progress. Unable to break through for 4 years, it could be said that his future was no longer too bright. No wonder his heart was so unbalanced. 13th level against 29th level. The difference between the two was as much as 16 levels. There was no need to doubt their battle experience. From all aspects, Lu Jun had an overwhelming advantage. This was the gap between a teacher and a student. The cold 4th fire rose around Lu Jun's body. Without breaking through to the quadruple crown, the light of the totem would not appear behind him. But the magic of the 29th level was enough to give Jidong a lot of pressure. Raising his right hand, a blue flame emerged from the palm of Lu Jun's hand. Under the contrast of the cold flame, the light in his eyes was even more vicious. If you want to blame yourself for being the disciple of that bastard Xia Tian. If you want to blame yourself for being an outstanding genius. I hate geniuses like you the most. We are all human. Why do you have the chance to become strong, but I can't break through to the quadruple crown? Step by step, Lu Jun walked towards Jidong. Everywhere he passed, the plants under his feet withered, leaving behind footprints that reflected the blue flame. Jidong did not retreat. He only stood where he was, staring coldly at the approaching Lu Jun coldly. He said, "You are unwilling to work hard and only know how to blame others. In my eyes, the gap between you and teacher Xia Tian cannot be measured by reason. You are trash. Then let this trash end the life of a genius like you first. Die." Lu Jun said darkly. With a flick of his burning right hand, a ball of blue 4th fire flew towards Jidong. When the 4th fire flew out of Lu Jun's hand, it was only the size of a fist. But in the blink of an eye, it had become a blue fireball the size of a wash basin. It chased after Hyoheim's moving body. Without retreating or running, Jidong did something that left Lu Jun dumbfounded. His left foot quickly took a big step forward. Because of the huge step, his entire body turned horizontally. Using his body and arm, he completed a half turn. His right fist punched out, meeting Lu Jun's attack head-on. At the same time, his fist turned golden. Chapter 27. Just as Jidong stepped forward and waved his fist, the blue light on his body had completely disappeared. The red light also converged in an instant, and even the yin-yang crown on top of his head had completely turned pure white. Lu Jun couldn't help but think, in the face of my attack, he actually retracted his magic? Isn't this courting death? Let my corrosive fireball devour your life. However, Lu Jun soon widened his eyes, because he was surprised to see that Jidong took a step forward and half-turned and waved a straight fist. On his fist, there was actually a solid golden flame. At this moment, even the white sun crown on top of his head flashed with a golden light. The 14-year-old youth's fist directly met the blue fireball the size of a wash basin, but the result was completely beyond the judgment of Lu Jun, the 29th level fire master. With a sizzling sound, the blue fireball was instantly extinguished. Lu Jun only saw a flash of golden fire, and Jidong's whole body had been knocked out. And Lu Jun himself also snorted and took a step back. The 4th fire magic in his body was trembling. "Impossible!" Lu Jun shouted hysterically, saying, This is a tribute suppression. No, impossible." Bang! Jidong's body hit a big tree and slowly slid down. With a cry, he spat out a mouthful of blood. After all, there was an insurmountable gap between the 13th level and the 29th level. Although he could break Lu Jun's fourth fire attribute, he could not break the strength of the energy contained in it. However, fortunately, he broke the fourth fire attribute and offset most of the attack power of the corrosive fireball. Otherwise, this was enough to seriously injure him. Lu Jun was right. What he encountered was attribute suppression. The attributes of a high-level flame absolutely suppress the attributes of a low-level flame. The punch that Ji Dong threw just now was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. This was the Flame Monarch's benchmark skill that he had practiced for 2 months, Scorching Sun Devour. When the Scorching Sun Devour was released, the magic in Ji Dong's body was instantly extracted and transferred to his right arm through the yin and yang vortex on his chest, and finally condensed on his right fist. This seemingly simple punch contained countless mysteries. Even if he had practiced hard for 2 months, Ji Dong still could not fully grasp it. It was this benchmark skill, under the situation of attribute suppression, that abruptly dissolved more than half of the attack power of Lu Jun's corrosive fireball, which made Ji Dong only suffer a shock and not a serious injury. Facing such a strong enemy, Ji Dong naturally did not dare to hold back. Therefore, he used his Bingwu primordial yang, sacred fire, right away. Slowly climbing up from the ground, Ji Dong looked at the shocked Lu Jun and took a deep breath. Under the full force of his will, the yin and yang vortex rapidly rotated, and a cold light suddenly burst out from Ji Dong's eyes. Even if he knew that there was a huge gap between him and Lu Jun, he still rushed towards Lu Jun. The yin and yang crown turned black and white again. As Ji Dong ran quickly, he spread his arms, and in his left hand, a black flame rose into the sky. His right hand clenched into a fist and turned completely golden. The extreme attributes of the Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire and the Dingxi netherworld spiritual fire burst out. There was no doubt that Lu Jun could suppress Ji Dong in terms of the strength of his magic. However, when Ji Dong released his 2 extreme flames without reservation, the absolute suppression in attributes made Lu Jun feel breathless. Previously, when it was only the Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire, the fourth fire magical power in Lu Jun's body was already trembling. At this time, with the Dingxi netherworld spiritual fire of the same origin, Lu Jun only felt that the fourth fire magical power in his body was about to be extinguished. At this time, he could not even use 50% of his ability. In fact, although Ji Dong could completely suppress Lu Jun in terms of the fire attribute, the gap between the two was too big. If Lu Jun could maintain a balanced mentality and deal with it calmly, with the strength of his magic far higher than Ji Dong's, he could still easily defeat Ji Dong. However, when Ji Dong punched out the Devourer of the Sun, which was clearly a magic skill, and the comprehensive suppression of the fire attribute, Lu Jun's heart was already out of balance. Looking at Ji Dong, whose eyes were cold and whose hands were covered with gold and black flames that he had never seen before, his cowardice suddenly appeared. He subconsciously retreated, and at the same time, his hands suddenly raised in front of his body, turning into a layer of blue flame shield, trying to block Ji Dong's advance, instead of attacking him. In terms of momentum, the level 29 Lu Jun was completely suppressed by the level 13 Ji Dong. Faced with Lu Jun's defense, Ji Dong did not have the slightest intention of stopping. As his body rushed forward, he suddenly took a big step forward and attacked with another Devourer of the Sun. He was only 14 years old, but this punch was filled with a violent aura. At this moment, the ruthlessness in Ji Dong's bones had completely erupted. It was very clear that Lu Jun was only temporarily stunned by his ultimate dual flames. Once he reacted, with the huge difference in their magic powers, he would not be a match for him at all. Then, only death awaited him. If I die, I'll never see the flaming bar again. At the thought of this, the blood in Ji Dong's entire body seemed to be burning like his flames. When this Devourer of the Sun was thrown out, he instantly reached the peak state that he had not reached in the past 2 months. The moment the Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire came into contact with the blue flame shield, the fourth fire on the blue flame shield was extinguished. In the midst of the loud bang, a strange scene appeared. As the strength of Lu Jun's magic was indeed much stronger than Ji-dong's, Ji-dong's punch was unable to break through his defensive magic skill. However, the Bingwu primordial Yang's sacred fire did not care about this. The effect of the Devourer of the Sun was instantly unleashed, and the blue flame shield instantly turned golden. Moreover, Ji-dong's Bingwu primordial Yang's sacred fire actually relied on its own extreme attributes to madly burn away the magic in the flame shield. However, Lu Jun also took this opportunity to wake up. Although the blazing golden flame in front of him was terrifying, it still couldn't break through his defense. This made him immediately remember the level gap between him and Ji-dong. Even if Ji-dong's flame was special, Ji-dong was still only level 13. Even if Ji-dong couldn't break through his defense, Lu Jun had a level 29 fire magic. Even if his attributes were suppressed, Ji-dong still couldn't contend with him. However, just as Lu Jun was about to wake up, he suddenly saw a hand burning with black flames. The hand passed through the flame shield in front of him that had already been burnt to a golden color. It broke through the shield, and a claw just happened to scratch Lu Jun's body. The claw with black flames cut into Lu Jun's right shoulder, leaving a long mark that spread to the left side of the ribs. The black flames seemed to be sticky, completely sticking to Lu Jun's body. The wound was only half open, but the black flames were an extremely terrifying existence. Lu Jun only felt that his whole body was paralyzed. An extremely cold aura swarmed into his body from the small wound on his chest. He also felt that his internal organs were burning, as if all the organs in his body were on fire. Even if he was a Fuhua series magician, this claw also broke his courage. It was precisely because Lu Jun himself was a Fuhua series magician. After being hit by this claw, he felt particularly real. The incomparably pure Yin fire suppressed his own fourth fire, and he couldn't even lift his head. In the case of the same attributes, the corrosive effect of this black flame actually completely worked on him. Not only did it directly break through his protective fourth fire magic, it also madly drilled into his body. Bang! The golden flame shield turned into countless streams of light that scattered in all directions and unexpectedly exploded. Lu Jun, who was hit by that black flame claw, had no way to continue to pour magic into the flame shield. The bright golden fist enlarged in front of Lu Jun's eyes. That short period of half a second of paralysis had a fatal effect at this time. Lu Jun simply couldn't gather magic to resist. That flashing black flame claw was not done casually by Ji-dong. That was his other benchmark skill, and also the first skill brought to him by the Dark Flame Devil's memories, Dark Moon Claw. Scorching Sun Devour and Dark Moon Claw were the two benchmark skills that Ji-dong had been practicing hard for the past 2 months. They both had a common characteristic. When used, the whole body's magic would be mobilized, and the action would be done in one breath. Ji-dong's fire magic would be condensed to the greatest extent. Ji-dong understood that if these two skills were really regarded as benchmark skills, they would definitely be the highest level of benchmark skills. Previously, Ji-dong's full-strength punch, Scorching Sun Devour, bombarded Lu Jun's defensive flame shield. The Xingwu primordial Yang's sacred fire not only suppressed Lu Jun's fourth fire, but also instantly burned the magic of his shield. When Ji-dong practiced the two benchmark skills, in order to pursue the best effect, he would alternately release the skills, so he almost subconsciously grabbed with his left hand with the Dark Moon Claw. An unexpected effect appeared. When the Dingxi Netherworld spiritual fire on his Dark Moon Claw came into contact with the Xingwu primordial Yang sacred fire that burned Lu Jun's defensive magic shield, there was immediately a change. Just like when he condensed the yin-yang crown? Yes, when the two extreme flames suddenly collided, it immediately produced a strong explosive force, and actually forcibly broke through the energy defense that was far stronger than Ji-dong's own magic power. The claw went through the shield and directly grabbed Lu Jun's body. It was also because of its suddenness that Lu Jun, who had come to his senses, had no time to dodge. Compared to the upright and fierce Scorching Sun Devour, The Dark Moon Claw was not only soft and sinister, but also extremely fast. The half-second paralysis was one of the characteristics of the Dark Moon Claw. Of course, Jidong wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. As the energy shield lost Lu Jun's support and broke, he immediately followed up with another scorching sun devour fist. The location of the attack was exactly the same as the long scar created by the Dark Moon Claw. After what had happened earlier, Jidong had already vaguely understood the relationship between his two flames. In addition to the guidance that Raging Flame had given him, the connection between this punch could be said to be perfect. Even though this punch also made Jidong pay the price of mana overdraft. When the right fist containing the golden flames bombarded ruthlessly on Lu Jun's body, a powerful scene immediately erupted. Lu Jun's body seemed to explode like fireworks, and the golden and black flames scattered in all directions. The two colored flames suddenly erupted from his body, and his chest suddenly rumbled as if it had been hit by a bomb. However, strangely, Lu Jun's body was not blown away by Jidong's punch. He only retreated half a meter, as if there was a force pulling him back. This was not the effect of Lu Jun's own resistance, but the special effect of the Scorching Sun Devour. When the Scorching Sun Devour was used, it was not only strong and ferocious, but also had a rotating force, so the enemy that was hit would not be blown away. With a plop, the first to fall was not Lu Jun, but Jidong, who had blasted out the last punch. Under the huge pressure, each of his previous attacks could be said to be beyond his ability, and he had completely overdrafted his mana. Although the Scorching Sun Devour and the Dark Moon Claw were advanced benchmark skills, Jidong's continuous use still exceeded his body's limits. At this moment, his body finally collapsed. He had been injured by Lu Jun's attack earlier, and his body was overdrafted this time, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. However, Lu Jun's situation was even worse. He stood there wrapped in the two colored flames. The golden flames had already faded after the eruption, but the black Dingxi spiritual fire had completely covered his body along with the previous eruption. There was a bowl-sized wound on Lu Jun's chest, and one could vaguely see the gold and black intersecting inside. Lu Jun fell to his knees, and in the next moment, his body fell heavily beside Jidong. Did I kill someone? This was Jidong's first thought, but he did not even have the strength to get up, let alone determine whether Lu Jun was dead or alive. He could only watch helplessly as the black flames on his body seemed to become more intense. With his right hand barely touching his left chest, Jidong called out the two words that he was most familiar with and most desired. Flaming bar. When he first saw Lu Jun, it was not that Jidong did not think of using the flaming bar to escape. However, it would take at least 10 breaths of time for the Red Lotus to appear and teleport Lu Jun away. Now that he had finally defeated Lu Jun, regardless of whether Lu Jun was dead or alive, Jidong did not have the strength to fight anymore. He could only take this opportunity to call out. The Red Lotus petals brought warmth and hope. Jidong, who was in a blur of consciousness, only felt as if his body was wrapped in a warm current. In the next moment, he no longer knew what was going on. Lu Jun was not able to stop Jidong's teleportation, because he had already stopped breathing the moment his body fell. Caught off guard, the Dark Moon Claw and Dingxi's dark spiritual fire temporarily suppressed his mana, and his mana was in a vacuum after he had just used the flame shield. Under such circumstances, when the Scorching Sun Devour bombarded the black flames brought about by the Dark Moon Claw, the effects of the two extreme flames had already reached the level of an intermediate hit skill. This was also the benefit of a dual attribute magician that the Flaming Bar had once told Jidong. 1 + 1 was greater than 2, and it was definitely suitable in the Yin and Yang magician's combination skills, not to mention the combination of two extreme flames. Chapter 28. As he gradually regained consciousness, Jidong felt as if his body was enveloped in a scorching energy, as if he was soaking in a hot spring with a very high temperature. As he slowly opened his eyes, he was surprised to find that all he could see was a fiery red color. Both his body and his body were warm, and he felt very comfortable being enveloped in this scorching heat. His consciousness gradually became clear, and everything that he had experienced before he fainted was still vivid in his mind. Suddenly, as if he was being pulled by some kind of force, Ji-dong felt his body keep moving upwards. With a splash, he seemed to struggle free from something, and the red color in front of him faded away. Only then did Ji-dong realize in shock that he was not soaking in a hot spring at all, but in a golden red lava lake. There was also a layer of red light surrounding his body, and it was because of the protection of this light that he was not melted by the lava. "Do you feel better?" The flaming bar's gentle and pleasant voice rang out. Hearing her voice, Ji-dong immediately felt as if his entire body was filled with energy. He could not help but call out, "Flaming bar, where are you?" After experiencing a near-death experience, he had never longed to see the flaming bar as much as he did now. At this moment, he understood even more deeply that he was no longer the carefree leaving who could give up his life just to taste the best wine in the world. In his heart, she was also the first existence that surpassed wine. The red light quietly bloomed, and the familiar figure seemed to step through the void, appearing in front of Ji-dong in one step. With a gentle wave of her hands, a gentle energy lifted Ji-dong's body up. Looking at the flaming bar, who was half a head taller than him, Ji-dong's emotions surged. He instinctively grabbed the flaming bar's hands and said, "I thought I would never see you again." The flaming bar broke away from his hands without a trace and patted Ji-dong's head, saying, "It was really dangerous this time. If it wasn't for your good luck and strong battle awareness, I'm afraid you really wouldn't be able to see me again. You humans are really sinister. It seems like you have to quickly increase your combat ability." The flaming bar broke away from Ji-dong's hands and could not help but feel a little disappointed. The feeling of inferiority filled his heart again, and the surging emotions from before quietly disappeared. He said, "Flaming bar, why was I in a lava just now?" The flaming bar said, "Although you defeated that person, you overdraft yourself too much, and your origin was injured. I place you in the lava lake at the Earth's core to recuperate. That way, your origin yin-yang corona wouldn't degenerate due to overdraft." Ji-dong looked at the golden sun and black moon brands on his palms and said, "You saved my life. If it wasn't for the scorching sun devour and the dark moon claw, and without the two ultimate fires, I wouldn't have been able to live to see you again. I wonder how Lu Jun is doing." The flaming bar said calmly. The combination skill of two ultimate fires broke through his defenses and struck his vitals. What else could he have done? Dingxi's netherworld spirit fire would have completely melted his body, just like how he wanted to kill you without leaving a trace. Right now, all traces of him have disappeared into that forest. "He's dead?" Ji-dong looked at the flaming bar in shock. The flaming bar smiled and said, "Why? Are you nervous about killing someone for the first time?" "It's Ji-dong." Ji-dong shook his head and said, "Lu Jun is already gone mad. It's best if a scourge like him dies. I just didn't expect the effects of two ultimate fires to be so powerful. His magic power is 16 levels higher than mine." The flaming bar's expression suddenly turned serious, and he said, "If that's what you think, you're wrong. Although the Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire and Dingxi's netherworld spirit fire are ultimate fires, and can suppress low-level flames of the same element, the most they can help you is to contend against your opponent with the yin-yang corona of the same rank. You were lucky to be able to kill him." As he spoke, the flaming bar waved his left hand, and a layer of red light condensed in the air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a round disc. The center of the disc lit up, and an image appeared. It was the scene of the battle between Ji-dong and Lu Jun. The entire image started from the moment Lu Jun launched the corrosive fireball, but at a very slow speed. The flaming bar pointed at the blue fireball and said he didn't use his full strength for this attack. At most, he used 30 to 40% of his magic power. It's obvious that he didn't want to kill you in one go. Otherwise, if he used his full strength, even if you could offset the fourth fire's attributes, the energy that was several times more than yours would be enough to tear you apart in an instant. His level is twice yours, but you have to know that the increase in magic power for each level is not constant. A level 29's magic power is at least 4 to 5 times that of your level 13 magic power. This is not something that can be made up for with an advantage in attributes, but it's precisely because he wanted to kill you that he gave you the chance. The image continued until Ji Dong was blasted away. Under the control of the flaming bar, the image zoomed in on Lu Jun's face, and she said, "Did you see that? The suppression of your third Wu primordial son, holy fire, on his attributes gave him a huge shock. This person obviously doesn't have much battle experience, but he still let you rush towards him. Moreover, at this time, his heart was already extremely scared, and he actually chose to defend passively. Even I didn't expect that when the two sovereigns' standard skills, Scorching Sun Devour and Dark Moon Claw, landed on the same spot, the resulting effect was so strong that it broke through the layer of magic power. Moreover, you were able to quickly connect the two skills and explode your attack power beyond your level. Throughout the entire process, if he could muster up the courage to attack you with all his strength, even if it was just one attack, you would be dead. Not only you feel lucky, I also feel lucky. If I was facing two sovereigns at the same time, I'm afraid we wouldn't have the chance to meet each other." Speaking up to here, the flaming bar's left hand swiped across the screen, and the image in the air disappeared. She lowered her voice and said, "Before you leave the Fire Academy, stay here with me. You must first complete the first stage of magic skill training. I didn't tell you before, but as long as you can practice Scorching Sun Devour and Dark Moon Claw 1,000 times, you will be able to learn these two skills, which is equivalent to the two sovereign skills evolving. Do you remember how many times you practiced them?" Ji Dong said, "Before I met Lu Jun, I practiced these two skills 512 times each. I practiced them every day in the academy. After I used Scorching Sun Devour and Dark Moon Claw, I only had 30% of my magic left. It's not enough to use them again. I need to cultivate and condense my magic before I can practice them again. So I can only practice about 8 or 9 times a day. At night, I don't want to waste time practicing magic skills, so I absorb the 2 fire elements to increase my magic." The flaming bar's eyes revealed a seriousness that Ji Dong had never seen before. She lowered her voice and said, "There are 9 days left before you leave for the Middle-earth Empire. In these 9 days, even if you don't sleep or rest, you must practice these 1,000 times. The fire element in the Earth's core lake is abundant, which can help you recover your magic quickly. Moreover, you should have more experience in the use of Scorching Sun Devour and Dark Moon Claw after your previous performance, so you can use them better. In these 9 days, you cannot have any time to rest, and I will always supervise you. Only with these 2 basic skills can you better protect yourself." Ji Dong nodded and said, "I will definitely work hard. However, Flaming Bar, I want to return to the academy every day. After all, I can't let the teacher on duty think that I'm missing. At most 10 minutes will be enough." The Flaming Bar said, "All right, time is pressing. Go back to the academy first, then come back immediately and start." All right. Under the Red Lotus's escort, Ji Dong quietly returned to the academy. It was the holidays now, so no one would actually notice whether he was in the academy or not. If it was someone else, they would definitely go to the small forest to see if Lu Jun had really died without leaving any traces. However, Ji Dong didn't, because he didn't doubt the words of the Flaming Bar at all. After hurrying back to his room, Ji Dong immediately went to the back of the bar, washed his hands, and picked up the familiar mixer. This was the real reason why he fought for 10 minutes from the Flaming Bar every day. When he called out the Flaming Bar's name again and returned to the Earth's core lake, there was a pink and blue cocktail in his hand. The Flaming Bar took the cocktail from Ji Dong's hand, and a rare glint flashed in her eyes. She said, "Ji Dong, did you go back just to make a cocktail for me? Don't say that you don't want the teacher on duty to worry. You know, I can see everything about you." Ji Dong scratched his head. "I still owe you 95 years. How can I just cut it off like this? Besides, it didn't take up much time. I'll start practicing now." The Flaming Bar patted his head out of habit. Although Ji Dong felt helpless about the Flaming Bar's action, it was undoubtedly a good thing to have physical contact with her. It had been 4 years. He was used to it. A layer of dazzling red light shone from the flaming bar's body and turned into a stream of light that shot towards the Earth's core lake below them. When the light entered the Earth's core lake, a loud rumbling sound was heard, and the entire underground world seemed to tremble. Not long after, under Ji Dong's astonished gaze, an irregularly shaped boulder with a diameter of about 30 meters slowly emerged from the magma lake. The boulder was dark red in color, and as soon as it emerged from the magma, it caused the already slightly distorted air to become even more illusory and hazy. The flaming bar brought Ji Dong down slowly and floated next to the boulder that was 10 meters high from the magma lake. In an instant, the flaming bar's eyes turned crystal red, and Ji Dong could vaguely see illusory red lotus petals opening up in all directions. Then, the flaming bar swung her left hand. The pale red blade of light drifted out and looked like a thin layer of red muslin. It swept past the center of the boulder that even the magma could not melt. The boulder did not move an inch, but a bright red line was left in the center. The flaming bar retracted her left hand and swung it upwards. Instantly, the bright red line rose, and the boulder above turned completely red. Then, it turned into red light spots and scattered in the air. Even the most beautiful fireworks were not as dazzling as the scene before them. The red light spots flew up and formed a red bridge between Ji Dong, the flaming bar, and the flattened boulder. Such an incredible scene was enough to intoxicate anyone. Below them was the magma lake, and in the center was the boulder that was as flat as a small island. This bridge that was completely condensed from energy stretched across the sky. The flaming bar's long dress swayed gently, and she brought Ji Dong along the bridge. With the help of the dense fire element, they arrived on the boulder in the blink of an eye. Release your mana, or else you won't be able to withstand the temperature on the stone platform. Remember, you have to maintain the appearance of releasing your mana to continue cultivating. You can start now. Ji Dong nodded. With a thought, the origin yin-yang crown in his chest that had recovered its vitality shone brightly, and the yin-yang vortex continued to spin. Of course, he did not need to use the divine yin-yang lock technique in this place, and directly released all of his mana. The yin-yang crown that shone with black and white colors appeared above his head. However, whether it was the crown star or the flame brand on the crown peak, they had become a combination of black and gold instead of the original red and blue colors. Just as Ji Dong released his mana, the flaming bar also retracted the shield that was protecting him. Although he had already released 2 types of ultimate fire, Ji Dong still felt a scorching heat rising from his feet. He did not dare to delay, and immediately began practicing the benchmark skill. He took a step forward with his left foot, turned his body halfway, and threw a punch with his right hand. Every bit of Bingwu primordial yang sacred fire in his body followed his movement and condensed in his right fist. His right fist instantly turned into a brilliant gold and suddenly struck the air, causing the surrounding air to ripple due to the high heat to spread. Ji Dong only felt that the speed at which his mana condensed had increased compared to when he was practicing previously. This caused the speed at which he released the Scorching Sun Devour to increase, and his mana was also compressed in that instant. There was no doubt that the more the Bingwu Primordial Yang Sacred Fire was compressed, the more powerful the attack would be. After throwing a punch, Ji Dong took advantage of the momentum and stepped forward with his right foot. At the same time, he waved his left hand, and the black Dingxi Netherworld Spiritual Fire appeared in the shape of a claw. It brought along a ray of light that looked like a black light slash. The 2 attacks were connected extremely quickly, and the mana in his body surged out. You're so stupid. You've been practicing for 2 months, but you're still not completely right. The flaming bar's stern voice was heard. It was the first time that the flaming bar had spoken to him in such a tone. Apart from feeling curious, Ji Dong's heart also tightened. Apart from letting him cultivate here, helping him condense the yin-yang crown, and giving him the memories of the 2 great sovereigns, the flaming bar did not really give him any pointers. At this moment, The flaming bar did not leave just because he had started cultivating for the first time. It was obvious that he wanted to guide him personally. Chapter 29. Although Ji Dong had a stubborn personality, it didn't mean that he was stupid. He understood that the flaming bar was here to guide him because she was worried about his near-death experience with Lu Jun. Ji Dong was already very satisfied that the flaming bar was worried for him. He made up his mind that no matter how difficult the next 9 days were, he wouldn't retreat. The flaming bar walked in front of Ji Dong with a wine glass in his left hand. His stern gaze was filled with immense pressure as he said, "Remember, when using any skill, you have to be completely focused from the moment you start. Although you've already started to activate the mana in your body when you take a step forward, why didn't you activate it with all your might? Why did you only activate it when you threw a punch? Just this flaw alone will cause you to lose 10% of your mana. Also, when you use Scorching Sun Devour and Dark Moon Claw, why did you release both types of mana at the same time? Didn't I already tell you that with the Yin-Yang Vortex, you can change your mana into a single type at any time? Only then can you unleash the full power of these two benchmark skills. Their power will be at least 30% stronger than it is now." Ji Dong was shocked as he said, "You're saying that I have to first convert all my mana into Bing Wu Primordial Yang Sacred Fire. Then after I use Scorching Sun Devour, I have to convert all my mana into Ding Si Dark Spiritual Fire and use Dark Moon Claw? The conversion between these two extreme attributes will take a long time. It'll be very difficult to connect these two skills." The flaming bar snorted coldly and said, "That's because you're not proficient enough. Even these two benchmark skills are close combat skills. Not only do you have to have enough attack power, you also have to be fast. Your biggest problem now is the method and speed of exertion. When you faced Lu Jun, you actually achieved the requirements I mentioned earlier with the last two attacks. However, your previous two attacks were far from it. Carefully feel the memories of the two sovereigns and continue practicing." Ji Dong's difficult days had begun. The flaming bar's gentle and tranquil attitude had disappeared in these 9 days. The platform in the center of the Earth's core lake echoed with the flaming bar's reprimanding voice at Ji Dong. "Are you a pig? Is this how one exerts force? How many times have I told you? From the moment you're about to attack, you have to mobilize every ounce of strength in your body. Can't you change your way of thinking? Don't you think that using the Dark Moon Claw before using the Devouring Sun would be more effective? Is the paralysis effect of the Dark Moon Claw just for show? Don't try to release your flames. You haven't reached that level yet. Doing so will only waste more mana. Idiot, with your current mana, you should be able to use 2 sets of benchmark skills under normal circumstances. Why is it that you can only use it once before running out of mana? Why don't you think about it properly? There are so many fire elements here, but your recovery is still so slow. Can't you use your mind to guide more?" Similar voices never stopped in the 9 days. The flaming bar had turned into the strictest teacher. Even if Ji Dong made a slight mistake, she would point out angrily. He practiced over and over again, sat on the ground to recover mana. Ji Dong had no idea how much time had passed, but his biological clock would always remind him of the right time that he had to return to the academy for a few minutes. "Flaming bar, I should go back for a while." Ji Dong supported his body and climbed up. His eyes had already turned completely red. The flaming bar frowned at him and said, "Okay." The red lotus swept over and teleported Ji Dong's body away. The moment he disappeared, the flaming bar's expression relaxed. She drew a circle in the air with her right hand. As the light flickered, the scene of Ji Dong shuttling away under the protection of the red lotus appeared. "Ji Dong, don't think that I'm too cruel. I don't want to feel heartache again. Do you know, that day when you were about to be killed, I couldn't save you. I've never experienced that kind of heartache before. It was then that I realized how afraid I was of losing you. You're about to go to a foreign place. Only by having the power to protect yourself can you better survive in the human society. Even I don't know what I see you as. Friend? Younger brother? Or something else?" The flaming bar's body trembled slightly as she mumbled to herself. Her gaze froze as she stared at the light screen. She clearly saw Ji Dong crawling to the back of the bar. He grabbed the edge of the bar and struggled to stand up. His body and arms were shaking nonstop, but he still picked up the shaker. He bit his lower lip, and his bloodshot eyes were filled with determination. He opened the shaker's lid with difficulty and took a bottle of wine. He wanted to pour it into the shaker, but his hand was shaking so badly that he couldn't control his movements. For a bartender, it was impossible to make a successful drink if his hands were not steady. It had been 9 days, and Ji-dong had been training without sleep or rest. Even though the extremely rich fire element in the Earth's core lake had replenished his mana and even replenished a certain amount of his physical strength, his mental state was already on the verge of collapse. Ji-dong's blurred consciousness was already somewhat unable to control his hands. However, he didn't give up. He picked up a high-wave glass and smashed it on the bar. The glass shards flew everywhere. Ji-dong picked up a sharp shard and stabbed it into the fingertip of his left hand. This was the moment when the flaming bar's gaze froze. The fingers were connected to the heart. The intense pain stimulated Ji-dong's mental state. He didn't waste any time. He didn't even care about the wound on his finger. He took advantage of this short period of mental clarity and quickly poured a few types of wine into the shaker, according to the ratio. Why? Why do I have a sore nose? Is this how humans feel when they want to cry? But I don't know how to cry. Why does it feel like my throat is blocked? Ji-dong, are you really the devil in my life? No, I can't. I can't go on like this. Otherwise, I might not be able to leave him in the future. It'll only be more painful. The flaming bar waved her hand and dispersed the light screen in the air. Her eyes flickered as if she had made a decision. Not long after, Ji-dong returned to the geocentric lake with a red lotus. He handed the cocktail in his hand to the flaming bar. The flaming bar took the glass and said in a deep voice without any expression, "Continue." Ji-dong didn't say anything else. He immediately immersed himself in practicing his skills. Although the flaming bar had already made up her mind, she couldn't help but glance at Ji-dong's left hand. She could vaguely see that the wound on his finger was charred. It was obvious that Ji-dong had used his flames to burn the wound so that the blood wouldn't flow out. Looking at the fine wine in her glass, the flaming bar didn't dare to drink it for the first time. At this moment, as Ji-dong performed Scorching Sun Devour and Dark Moon Claw again, his body suddenly stiffened. A golden ray of sunlight flashed behind him, followed by a pitch-black moonlight. Ji-dong stood there and swayed. He forced himself to turn a look at the flaming bar and said, "I succeeded." After succeeding 1,000 times, the ultimate dual flames in Ji-dong's body erupted. However, the string in his heart that was stretched taut had snapped, and he fell straight to the ground. The flaming bar took a step forward and caught Ji-dong's body. She looked at him, then at the glass in her hand. An indescribable emotion flashed through her eyes. She hugged him tightly and carefully laid him flat on the ground. Behind the flaming bar, the crystal-clear red lotus fire bloomed once again. The fire elements in the air condensed into black and gold colors. They engulfed Ji-dong's body and enveloped him, nourishing his extremely exhausted body. After doing that, the flaming bar suddenly rose into the air. After taking a deep look at Ji-dong in the air, he held the glass in his hand tightly and turned into a red meteor, disappearing at the end of the lava lake. When Ji-dong woke up from his coma, he was surprised to find that he actually felt refreshed in this scorching environment. The yin-yang vortex in his chest was spinning normally, and it was clearly stronger than 9 days ago. During the 9 days of hellish cultivation, he didn't have the time to pay attention to the state of his mana. Now that he thought about it, although this extreme cultivation method could easily cause a person to collapse, it was undoubtedly more beneficial to the improvement of his abilities. He got up from the platform and looked around. There was no sign of the flaming bar. He couldn't help but shout, "Flaming bar, are you there? It's time for you to go back. Your partner has already gone to the academy to look for you. You don't have to come here often. Remember to practice the 2 newly obtained benchmark skills diligently. At the same time, remember to use the divine yin-yang lock to conceal your true abilities." The flaming bar's voice came from all directions. However, Ji-dong suddenly felt that there was something different in her voice. There was no fluctuation of emotion. It was extremely calm. Before Ji-dong could say anything else, the red light had already swept up and enveloped his body, silently disappearing into the Earth's core. Bang, bang, bang. As soon as Ji Dong returned to his room, he heard hurried knocks on the door. Boss, are you there? They were already here. Ji Dong looked at his clothes that were definitely not clean and said helplessly, I'm here. When he opened the door, he saw Car and Bis So, who had changed into ordinary clothes, standing outside the door. Car's clothes were still so simple, while Bisu's clothes were more luxurious. However, it was only a simple blue-fitting suit without many decorations. Boss, what took you so long? Wow, why are you so dirty? There's even a smell all over you. Don't tell me you haven't bathed for many days. Bisso looked at Ji Dong and made a fuss. Ji Dong let the two into the room and said, I've been cultivating for the past few days. Wait for me. I'll tidy up and we'll set off. Looking at the sky outside, it was early morning. He took a quick shower and ran to the canteen to find some food to eat. He put all the alcohol on the wine cabinet and some clothes into his storage bracelet. He was done tidying up. Boss, you're not going to go in your school uniform, are you? This time, even Carr couldn't help but ask. Ji Dong looked at the 3rd Fire Department uniform he was wearing and said, What's wrong with it? You also know that I was picked up by President Yang. Besides the school uniform, what else can I wear? Bissot smiled and said, My dad said that people should be low-key. It's best not to let people know that we're Yin and Yang magician. Boss, I knew you only had the school uniform to wear, so I've already prepared it for you. 4 sets of ordinary cloth clothes, a total of 1 gold coin. Pay up. As he spoke, Bissot raised his hand and revealed a ring with a blue gem on his index finger. In a flash of blue light, 4 sets of cloth clothes had appeared in front of Ji Dong. Ji Dong was secretly moved. He knew that Bissot asked him for money because he knew his character. He didn't like to accept benefits from others. Taking the clothes, he took out a gold coin and gave it to him. Thanks. Carr leaned against the wall and murmured, Sure enough, women are more careful. It seems that being a sissy is also good. Carr, if you say I'm a sissy again, I'll fight with you. Bissot said angrily. Carr smiled and said, Yes, make an orchid gesture. You should say, I'll fight with you. Looking at the two laughing and joking, Ji Dong felt warm in his heart. It felt good to have brothers with him. He quickly changed into cloth clothes and said, Let's go. We don't have enough time to get to our destination in 10 days. When the 3 of them walked out of the Fire Academy, they couldn't help looking back. After all, this was the place where they had lived together for 4 years. How could they not have feelings for each other? Feeling Carr and Bisu's reluctance to leave, Ji Dong put his arm around their shoulders and said, We will come back again. At that time, we will definitely be the strongest Yin and Yang magician. The Fire Academy will be proud of us. After exiting Fire City, the 3 of them sat on a horse carriage and headed towards the northeast. Their destination wasn't just the Central Plains Empire, the largest empire in the continent. The place they were heading to was also the central point of the continent, the capital of the Central Plains Empire, the Central Plains city that was also known as the dot of the continent. The Central Plains, bordered by the other 4 empires, had a vast land area, and the majority of the land was flat. It was definitely the strongest empire in the continent. It was rich and powerful, just like the Central Plains in the world before Ji Dong's death. However, what Ji Dong didn't understand was that according to the knowledge taught by the Fire Academy, although there were 5 empires in the continent, there were very few wars between them. This was especially so for the Central Plains, which occupied such a fertile land and was surrounded by the other 4 empires. Under normal circumstances, the borders of the Central Plains shouldn't be so peaceful. In fact, the 5 empires had always lived in harmony with each other. Chapter 30. Boss, we're almost at the border of the Southern Fire Empire. What should we do next? My dad said that it's not safe to ride a horse. Otherwise, we might have already entered the territory of the Middle Earth Empire by now. Bissot complained. After 3 days in the carriage, the 3 finally arrived at the border city of the Southern Fire Empire, Starfire City. They decided to stay here for 1 night before continuing their journey. The Southern Fire Empire was located in the southernmost part of the 5 Elements continent, bordering the Western Gene Empire, Middle Earth Empire, and Eastern Wood Empire. If they were to leave Starfire City, they would need to cross the border, so they could only walk by themselves. Jidong was currently sitting on the bed in the inn, spreading out a map to study the specific route. Jidong pointed at the map for Kar and Bisso to see. Look, Blazing City is located in the west of the Southern Fire Empire. We took the shortest route to reach the border, and Starfire City itself is also a border city on the west side of the Southern Fire Empire. From here, we have two choices. One is to go east, go around the Frost Mountain Range that crosses the Western Gene Empire, Middle Earth Empire, and Southern Fire Empire, pass through Bingrong City in the center of the Southern Fire Empire's border, enter the Middle Earth Empire, and continue north until we reach the Central Plain City. This route is easier, it's all official roads, but we'll have to walk at least 500 li. The Frost Mountain Range is the second largest mountain range in the continent, spanning nearly 1,000 li. If we want to go around it and reach the Central Plains City within 7 days, time will be very tight. The other route is to go northeast from Starfire City, directly through the Frost Mountain Range, and enter the Middle Earth Empire. Although the Frost Mountain Range is very long, it's only less than 100 li in length. In this case, we should be able to save a lot of time, but the road will be much harder. If we encounter magic beasts, we'll be in danger. Which route do you think is better? Kar said without hesitation. Let's go straight through the Frost Mountain Range. This way, we can save at least 2 days. Also, when teacher Xiatian taught us the geography of the continent, didn't he say that the Frost Mountain Range is an area with very few magic beasts? Even if there are, they're only low-level magic beasts. We should be able to deal with them. Before condensing the Yin Yang crown, teacher Xiatian taught me some basic skills. Although they're not very powerful, they're enough to support me. Bisso snorted. Do you think you're the only one who knows? Teacher Qiu Tian also taught me. Although Xiao Tian also had plans to teach Jidong, neither he nor Qiu Tian knew how Jidong would teach. After all, neither of them had ever seen a demon master with both yin and yang attributes. Yang Bing Tian directly rejected their plans to teach Jidong magic skills, and told them that the Heavenly STEM Academy was the most suitable place for Jidong to learn. Magic skills couldn't be practiced casually. If one practiced a magic skill that wasn't suitable for oneself, it would be harmful to one's own cultivation. Hearing this, Jidong was instantly relieved. I also know a few basic skills. Then it's decided. Tomorrow morning, we'll buy some necessary supplies and set off to cross the Frost Mountain Range. It's getting late. You guys go back to your rooms and rest. Jidong also had his own plans. Just like what Kar said, the probability of magic beasts appearing in the Frost Mountain Range was very low. Moreover, they were all yin and yang magicians, so this could reduce the time spent on the road. Moreover, he had been in a daze for the past few days, so he didn't think too much about it. The three of them got 2 rooms in the hotel. Jidong used the excuse that he wasn't used to staying with others as an excuse, so he stayed alone in one room, while Kar and Bisso shared a room. Of course, he did this so that he could mix drinks for the flaming bar. Although he had been on the road for the past 3 days, he hadn't stopped this job that he had been working on for 4 years. Kar and Bisso went back to their rooms to rest. Jidong immediately took out his bartending equipment from his storage bracelet, and after carefully making a cocktail, he called out the name of the flaming bar. The geocentric lake was still as hot as ever. Ever since the flaming bar created that platform in the magma, every time Jidong initiated a teleportation, he would appear directly in the center of the platform. A red light flashed, and Jidong's feet landed on the ground. However, he wasn't in the mood to feel the rich fire elements around him. His eyes quickly looked around, but he couldn't find any trace of the flaming bar. "Flaming bar, are you there?" He shouted loudly, but he didn't get any response. It had been 3 days. Ever since he woke up from his coma, he hadn't seen the flaming bar again. These few days, he would be teleported back to the surface after the drinks were delivered. The flaming bar never appeared. Not even a sound could be heard. However, Jidong could feel her presence. If she wasn't there, how could he complete the teleportation process? But why isn't the flaming bar seeing me? Although he came with hope, Jidong's heart was filled with disappointment once again. The wine glass in his hand flew away on its own, heading towards the depths of the geocentric lake. Meanwhile, the light of the red lotus had enveloped his body, teleporting him back to the hotel room. It wasn't until Ji Dong's figure completely disappeared that the perfect figure of the flaming bar slowly appeared on the huge rock. She was holding a glass of wine, tasting the wine in the glass in a lonely manner. Her expression was surprisingly similar to Ji Dong's. Her bright eyes were shining with a dazed light, as if she was thinking about something. Shaking her head gently, the flaming bar mumbled to herself, "Don't think too much about it. He's just a human after all. Whether it's family or friendship, if I spend too much time with him, I won't be able to bear this unbearable feeling. If he dies in the human world, won't I have to go through that extreme pain again? It's better to not see him. It's a good thing for him and me. Ji Dong, I'm sorry. You'll eventually forget about me. I hope you can become stronger and stronger in your cultivation." Returning to the hotel room, even though Ji Dong was a little tired from the 3 days of travel, he couldn't fall asleep for a long time. As soon as he closed his eyes, the beautiful face of the flaming bar would appear in his mind. He would rather the flaming bar scold him severely than not being able to see her or hear her voice. These few days, it was as if he had lost his soul. He had been working hard on his cultivation for the past 4 years, but now he seemed to have lost interest. The next morning, Ji Dong and the other two bought a large amount of food and water in Meteor Trail City. They placed them in Ji Dong and Bisu's storage bracelets and storage rings. With these two treasures, their journey would be much easier. Once they left Meteor Trail City, the three of them immediately started running. After determining their direction, they headed straight towards the northeast. In fact, they didn't need to look too closely. Meteor Trail City was only 100 miles away from the Frost Mountain Range. From afar, they could already see the seemingly endless mountains that looked like a sleeping dragon. With the solid foundation laid in the Fire Academy, the three of them ran for 100 miles in one breath. They only took a break when they reached the foot of the Frost Mountain Range. After eating something, they began to climb the mountain. This was the Frost Mountain Range, but from their current position, they couldn't feel the wind at all, let alone see any frost or snow. After all, the Southern Fire Empire was located in the southernmost part of the continent, so the temperature was relatively high. As for how this mountain range got its name, Ji Dong and the others didn't know. No matter what type of magic power it was, after cultivating it, it would cleanse the body of impurities and strengthen the body. The three of them were yin and yang magicians who had condensed the yin-yang crown. A short distance was nothing to them. After crossing the first few mountains, they quickly entered the hinterland of the Frost Mountain Range. The sun gradually rose from the east and hung in the middle of the sky. Ji Dong wiped the sweat on his forehead with his sleeve and said, "Let's take a break and eat something." After rushing for the whole morning, they had also crossed 3 mountains that were less than 1,000 meters high. Based on their current speed, they would definitely be able to pass through the Frost Mountain Range in 2 days. When they reached the borders of the Middle Earth Empire, they could easily hire a carriage and use the next 5 days to reach the Central Plain City. The three of them found a relatively flat place and sat together. Ji Dong took out some cured meat and bread from his storage bracelet and took out 3 water bags. He threw 1 each to Biso and 1 to Kar. Fire element magicians did have an innate advantage living in the wild. Their flames could not only light up the place and keep warm, but they also didn't have to worry about eating cold food. Ji Dong first picked up a piece of cured meat and ignited a red third flame in his right hand. He roasted it under the ground. After a while, the fragrance of the cured meat had already spread. He then roasted another piece of bread, and the fragrance immediately assailed their nostrils. Kar also sat and did the same thing as Ji Dong. Only Biso looked left and right. He had no choice. His fourth flame was definitely stronger than third flame in terms of corrosiveness and continuous attack. However, if he used that extremely strong flame to roast meat, the meat would be inedible. It would not be extinguished until it was completely burnt. Looking at Bisu's pitiful look, Ji Dong smiled and handed over the food he had roasted. He said, "Here, you eat first. I'll roast another." Biso was overjoyed. He took it without hesitation and ate heartily. Kar smiled. It was a bit strange for this big guy to have a flattering smile. However, the smile on his face could only be described as flattering. He said, "Boss, should we get some wine to refresh ourselves?" Ji Dong said in a bad mood, "You are not allowed to drink at noon. If you drink, it will not refresh you, but sleep. We will definitely be sleeping in the mountains tonight. At that time, I will definitely give you some wine to drive away the cold." Just as Ji Dong started to roast another portion of dry food, suddenly, a faint fishy smell drifted over. Ji Dong's six senses were extremely sensitive. He immediately woke up and stood up. He said, "Be careful, there might be a situation." Car and Bissot quickly stood up and came to Ji Dong's side. Bissot even had a piece of bread in his mouth. He opened his eyes wide and said vaguely, "Could it be a magical beast? I can't be that unlucky, right?" Ji Dong's gaze instantly sharpened. Staring in a certain direction, he slowly raised his right hand and suddenly clenched it into a fist. With a poof, a red flame filled with a wild aura instantly soared. With a whoosh, a green silhouette jumped out from the nearby shrubbery. When the three of them saw it, they immediately smiled. That's right, it was a magical beast. However, it was only a meter long, and its green fur was extremely shiny. Surprisingly, it was a small wolf. There were obvious magical fluctuations coming from its body, and it bared its fangs at Ji Dong and the other two as it whimpered. It was no wonder that Ji Dong and the other two would laugh. Although they didn't know much about magical beasts in their team, the magical beast in front of them was clearly a beginner-level wood-type magical beast, the Greenwood Wolf. The magical beasts on the Five Elements continent were divided into 10 ranks. If they were to be compared in terms of strength, then it would be like the 10 titles of the Yin and Yang magician. The first rank was a beginner-level magical beast. The second and third ranks were mid-level magical beasts. The fourth to sixth ranks were high-level magical beasts, and the seventh to ninth ranks were super magical beasts, also known as emperor-level magical beasts. The 10th rank was a legendary existence, also known as a divine beast. It was as rare as the 9 crowns of the Yin and Yang magician. Generally speaking, wolf-type magical beasts lived in the wastelands or forests. Only the Greenwood Wolf in front of them would live in the mountain forests. The Greenwood Wolf itself was only a mid-level magical beast, while the little fellow in front of them was clearly a beginner-level magical beast. It was like a demon master that had yet to condense a yin-yang crown. In addition, Ji Dong and the other two were all fire-type demon masters. Of the 5 elements, fire was the first to subdue metal and the second to subdue wood. It was 3 against 1, so it was no wonder that the 3 of them would laugh in such a relaxed manner. "Let me." Bissot jumped out and walked over to the little Greenwood Wolf with a grin. Handing over the fragrant roasted bacon, he said, "Do you want to eat it? You must have smelled it." The little Greenwood Wolf clearly didn't understand what he was saying. Looking at the bacon, its nose twitched and it moved closer, opening its mouth to take a bite. Bissot stuffed the bacon into his mouth, and as he chewed, he began to laugh heartily. "Even if you wanted to eat it, I wouldn't let you eat it. Who asked you to scare us? Ha! This little wolf is really interesting. Its fur hasn't even grown out yet, and it's already running out to steal food. Hurry up and leave. Big brother is kind, so I won't kill you." As he spoke, Bissot waved his hands, and 2 blue flames rose a meter high. As he waved them, the little Greenwood Wolf let out an aggrieved whimper, turned around, and dove back into the bushes. Bissot turned around and laughed. "Done. A little fellow like this actually dares to go out and rob others. It really doesn't have any self-awareness." Just as he said this, Bissot suddenly froze. This was because he realized that the smiles on Ji Dong and Car's faces had suddenly frozen. "Hurry up and come over," Ji Dong roared. He was the first to react, and he charged forward. Bissot subconsciously looked back and saw that from within the bushes, a 3-meter-long, 8-meter-tall wolf had emerged. Beside it, the little Greenwood Wolf from before was howling angrily at Bissot.